Okay, good morning, members and officers to our Economy and Development Select Committee. Just to make you all aware that we are live streaming today, so if you can ensure you put your microphones on. I don't believe we have any apologies for absence. I think we've got a full house today, which is correct. And we've also got Councillor David Evans with us as well, so great to have you join us. Sorry, Councillor Prosser.
Thank you, Chair. Just to let you know, I have to preside over a citizenship meeting at 11 o'clock, so I'll attend this meeting as and when I can and make as much contribution as I can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Prosser.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to note the apologies from Councillor Bob Greenland and Kelly Byrne, who were unable to attend.
Yeah, on that point, I just wanted us to note our disappointment that the Chief Officer and the Cabinet Member aren't here today, and that we were only notified late yesterday evening about that. So if that could be noted, and we'll follow that up with them both after this meeting. Thanks to the officers who are all here today. We'll move straight into our first agenda item after I've just looked at declarations of interest. Councillor Higginson.
Yes, Madam Chairman, it's on the Item 3, scrutinise draft capital budget proposals. Because I'm a Governor at Durand Primary, there's an issue, there's an element reference to Durand Air on school traffic management. And the other one is it's on the same page, which is page 12. Because I'm a member of Caldicot Town Council, we are currently in talks, if I put it that way, with County Council officials on a potential takeover of one of the local public toilets. So I'm just declaring it interest. It is personal, no more than that.
Thank you. And also,
at this moment in time.
Also, welcome. I should have said this from the start. It's great to have you join our committee. I've got Councillor White, then Councillor Prosser.
Thank you, Chairman. I will declare an interest on item 3, rights of way, because we own the land that has rights of way on it and a bridge.
Chair, there is reference to negotiations with town councils. I'm an Abergavenny town councillor, so I declare an interest, but non-prejudicial at this stage.
Okay, Councillor Watts.
Likewise for Chepstow.
Yeah, likewise for Abergavenny.
Councillor Debbie. Councillor Evans.
Yeah, on 21st Century School, I'm a governor at Caldicot School. Traffic management, I'm a governor at Castle Park Primary School. 3G pitch is on the agenda, and I'm a governor at, as I say, Caldicot School, and I'm also got interest with Caldicot Castle.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. We've noted those, so if there's no other declarations of interest, we'll move on to agenda item 3. And if the officers that are presenting, you could just introduce yourself, please, and just take us through the paper, and then obviously we'll follow up with questions.
What are we being if we, the public, they want to be made aware this is live streamed, isn't it? What's it live streamed on? I mean, don't say the internet.
It's via a YouTube channel, which you can connect to. If you go onto the monmouthshire.gov.uk website, you go to Watch Council Meetings Live, and then you click on it's a YouTube website.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which you want to stream. Okay. Okay, so agenda item 3, is that Joy? Are you presenting this one, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just going to introduce the context of the reports you've got in front of you this morning, and explain, the background to it. But obviously, the officers are here to answer any specific questions on the mandates, which I'm sure you'll want to scrutinise in detail. So today, we've brought to you the capital and revenue budget proposals that have been through Cabinet. And in addition to that, the risk assessment, and what we're trying to do is bring the two of those issues together so you can consider them together, so that you can consider your budget and any risks that may pose, or whether you're dealing with any of the risks through your budget, so you can combine those two issues together. And that's quite important that we make those links for you as we present the reports, but also that you are aware that that's what, the purpose of bringing those two reports, two issues to you today is about. So if I just introduce the first report, which is the capital budget proposals, and then we can pause for any questions at that point. really the main issues around the report are presented in the recommendations. So what we have now is an asset management plan, which you may have seen as a select committee. So we've tried very hard to link our capital investment with that asset management plan. We have a priority of investment in 21st century schools, as you know. We're forging ahead with making progress with that, subject to Welsh Government funding. But that does pose an issue for the rest of your capital programme. So we are directing our resources, capital receipts, and any potential borrowing that we may want to 21st century schools. And that really does limit what you can then do with the rest of your programme. So we've maintained your core programme at a constant level. It's not been inflated. Nothing's happened to it. It's just been maintained as is. Obviously, there are risks attached with that approach, and so the current fabric of your assets, your roads, your buildings, your bridges are trying to be maintained with very limited resource. So there is a risk attached to that. That is in the risk register. There may be critical points of failure which would mean that you would need to reprioritise capital spend or do some other mitigating factors to sort that problem out. And really the issues are highlighted in some of the appendices. So you've got a couple of appendices which highlight some current sort of immediate pressures, some long-standing pressures which are the whole set of backlog issues, and some current issues. And those are the things that we're going to have another look at, and Cabinet are going to have another look at in terms of whether any of those issues become higher priority than what's in your core programme at the moment. What Cabinet have agreed, though, in that respect, is when we look at those issues on those lists, they will only become part of your main funded programme if they can finance themselves. So if they pay for themselves as an income generating opportunity which could pay potentially for borrowing, or they are higher priority than what's already in your programme. So that principle has been agreed, and that's what we're using to work on in terms of whether they fit into the programme. As I've said, this report does link very heavily with the final report on your agenda about risks. So there are risks to your capital programme around obtaining the capital receipts you need to fund 21st century schools. There are risks that if you don't do that, then we would need further borrowing, and that has an impact on your revenue budget. And as I said, there may be critical points of failure in your core programme because of the limited amount of investment you've got in your current fabric. So without going too much more into any of the detail, I'll open it up for questions, if that's okay.
Okay, yep, let's go straight to questions then, and I'll start with Councillor Higginson, followed by Councillor Prosser. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I'm on page 11, which is Appendix 1A, Anticipated Capital Pressures. And I'm looking at we're talking about the major review of the waste management and recycling services. Further on into that particular block, the proposals are likely to include consideration of receptacles rather than bags. It's an anticipated cost of 0.3 to 1.3 million to accommodate the change the curbside. Developments will be needed at transfer stations and at an indicative cost of £800,000. But the bit that bothers me a bit is we're talking about receptacles, and from my part, I mean, currently we're on for domestic refuse, we are using the grey bags that are issued by the council at a cost to the council. Previous to that, we were using bags that we bought ourselves, and for me, there's no difference really in me buying bags again. On the basis I bought them before. There is a cost to the council for these grey bags. So if we're going to do away with anything, I should suggest we would do away with them anyway. But we talk about receptacles, so I'm not quite sure what that means. Is it a bin by the side of the road that they come along and empty one of these bins such as they have in Newport, or is it something else? And if I just deal with that one first, please. I do have another one, and it's on disability facility grants, but I can come back on that.
I'm not sure if anyone's able to answer that one here, but it'd be great if there's any. Sorry, Councillor Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This schedule here is anticipated pressures which could manifest themselves over a long period of time. They're certainly not pressures that are likely to take place in the next 12 months. The position regarding waste management and recycling service is that there is a move with Welsh Government to prefer curbside recycling. And in the event that we have to do curbside recycling, or we have to move to tilting bins, there will be a substantial capital cost associated with that. The position with Welsh Government currently is that, provided we can demonstrate that what we're doing is effective, they're likely to leave us alone, and that's what we intend to do. With regard to the grey bags, that is the subject of one of the mandates, but with your permission, I'll cover it now. The proposal is, having embedded the culture in the population, that they don't just throw things in black bags anymore. They're selective about what they do, and that's something that our residents have done extremely effectively, and we're very proud of what they've done. We are looking to save nearly £80,000 by not providing the grey bags anymore and inviting people to go back to providing their own black bags, but to still keep on with the newly embedded culture. I think our residents are responsible enough to do that. So Councillor Higginson is right to pick up the worry over waste management, but it's certainly not a current worry.
And I think we certainly have seen a change in mindset, so that policy could be implemented successfully. But I'm sure that's going to be picked up by strong communities. But Councillor Higginson, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, just if I can come back. I'm talking about general refuse. I mean, this recycling is the red and the blue bags. They're absolutely great as far as I'm concerned. I was talking about general refuse. Okay.
Did you have a question on DFG, the disability?
Yes, please. It's just I'm looking at and this is on page 13, and it's the bottom block there. Disability facilities grants, and it says the budgets remain unchanged for the last 10 years, and it's I'm just wondering, is it enough in terms of money for what the demands are? Considering the demands seem to me to be increasing. Okay.
Through your chair, I mean, I think we can safely say none of the money is enough for any of the demands that we've got on the capital programme, and this is one of them. If you needed some further detail on disabled facilities grants, we'd need to get the officer responsible here to you to explain those implications. But if you wanted to suggest putting more money into DFGs, you would need to identify what priority that is displacing in the programme itself.
Thank you very much. Councillor Prosser.
Thank you, Chair. Just item 4.9, last sentence reads, exploration of any alternative use of surplus assets needs to be undertaken before Council approves them for sale. And I'm just thinking what kind of exploration that is. Is it an officer thinking, what else can I do with this building? Or is it a community consultation? So I'd just like some assurance on what kind of exploration of alternative uses is taking place, please.
Hello, Ben Winstanley, acting estates manager currently. Councillor Prosser, good question. What we generally do is we look at internal uses for the building first of all, see if there's any internal clients that can use it. Recently we've reused or proposing to reuse one of the bungalows for a social services use before it is disposed of, and then we'll actually look to see whether it's worth retaining to generate a revenue source before disposing of it as a capital asset.
Chair, I think where I'm coming from is, do we then consult with town councils or town teams or area programme boards as such? Because sometimes they have some very useful suggestions. That's all I'd like to add to the equation there. The next brief question I've got is Llanfoes Bridge, and there's an estimation of £50,000 on page 10 for ongoing maintenance. Knowing how wild rivers can be and climate change, etc., I just say to myself, I wonder if that's enough, because and how confident you are. Is that a generous figure? Is it a very tight figure? So some comment on that would be appreciated.
I can actually pick up on the first point you made, but not Llanfoes Bridge. In terms of do we consult with community and town councils, as part of the disposals policy, we've embedded what central government called the right to bid, which enables communities, etc., to apply to acquire assets. So yes, before we actually put an asset on the open market, we would expect to be consulting with local representatives.
I can probably pick up on the robustness of the pressure side of it. At the moment, these are indications by, Mark Howcroft, Assistant Head of Finance. At the moment, these are estimations by the appropriate officers, highways. Clearly, they're not tendered sums, so they're not cast in stone. They're really just to give you an indication of the likely liability that the council has going forward. They're not an indication of what's already in the capital programme. And obviously, were they to come in there would be a far more robust exercise to undertake what the actual cost is likely to be, should members choose to treat that as a priority.
Okay, thanks. I've got Councillor Wintle, followed by Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's on page 10, and it's current rights-of-way issues, why in Usk Valley walks. It says about the Monmouth Viaduct and Wye Valley Walk. It's 23,000, what, 24,000, might as well call it. Monmouth Viaduct is, I thought Sustrans have got an interest in that. So why are we putting money into it when it's for their convenience, if anything? I think we ought to, that and A and OB also have got additional funding, and it's for their interests, so I think we ought to pass it over to them and get out of it.
I think Councillor Murphy would like to make a response.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just clarify something here? This list is not anything that's in any budget. They're indicatives in case they have to go into the budget. I'm detecting that people think that this is what we're actually proposing to do. If you look at the heading, it says anticipated capital pressures. So it's not in the budget. That we're just sending out a warning that this is the sort of thing that might crop up. It doesn't mean that it's in the budget.
No, but I think there's still a fair point from Councillor Wintle that it's being flagged up as an anticipated cost, and the question is should it not be Sustrans' cost rather than our own? If there's any officer here that could answer that, or maybe we take that back to the countryside team.
Ian Saunders, Head of Leisure, Tourism and Culture. As you're aware, Matthew Lewis and the countryside team are working with lots of different partners at the moment, and there's so many different bridges throughout Monmouthshire that are in quite a bad state of repair. We know that there's a lot of work going on with the different groups and societies, and Matthew and his team are doing what they can to make sure that the bridges stay safe, and they stay as our priority, keeping the bridges safe at the moment. But I will take that back to the countryside manager, Matthew Lewis, and we'll investigate and bring that back for a response.
Yeah, thank you. Because the viaduct is the old railway bridge, and if anybody, we haven't got a priority, or we shouldn't be involved in it really.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Can I first of all go back to Llanfoes Bridge? There's work currently being carried out on the Llanfoes side of the river. Has that anything to do with this block work or not?
Yeah, that might. I suppose that has to go back to the relevant team. Yeah, but if we could make a note then to come back to you on that then, Councillor Edwards, if that's okay.
And the other question really is over the first item, ACM and Abergavenny Regeneration. It's over £6 million. overspend forecast of 82,000. But is that a misprint here? Potential extent of compensation costs, High House Farm, 6 million? That's what it actually says.
My apologies, I didn't introduce myself earlier. It's Deborah Howells from Head of Community Delivery. Well, actually, last night we had some extremely good news in that we had the ruling of the preliminary hearing that took place in June, which, as you may recall, was actually whether the claimant of the shooting rights was entitled to a ransom value of the existing cattle market site, and that's where the 6 million figure came from. The court, the upper chamber has concluded that no, he's not entitled to that. He's lost the 6 million claim, and they've agreed that the value of the shooting rights is as we previously indicated, which is in the region of £1,000. That said, there are still items outstanding regarding that claim, but nowhere near the level we've discussed in this paper, and they've yet to be evidenced to us.
So can we clarify then that 6 million, which was anticipated potentially for the CPO side of things, that can be removed then out of that, but there will be some additional costs, as you mentioned, that will come forward, which maybe you can update us on another time?
Yes, certainly that's the ruling we received yesterday. Obviously, there may be a right of appeal that I'm sure the claimant will look into, but as it currently stands, that is the position.
Thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Edwards?
Can I just one thing then? If the 6 million's gone, there's an overspend of 82,000. Now, is that on the old cattle market or on the new cattle market?
That's the cost associated with defending the legal claims that we've been incurring on that site, and we're looking to see whether we're eligible to recover any of the costs that we've to date incurred defending that claim.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Hayward?
Thank you, Chair. 3 small points. First, to help Ian out, to clarify Councillor Wintlow's point, this committee was informed a couple of years ago that we had been successful in winning, or Sustenance had been successful in winning a huge grant for upgrading cycle paths, and the large proportion of that money was supposed to be spent on upgrading the Monmouth Viaduct. So that's why I asked the question, because we had previously been informed that funding for that had been obtained from Sustenance. In the paper itself, page 7, it's talking about issues for the underlying programme, item 4.4, and it says details of such issues are provided in Appendix 1B. I can't find Appendix 1B in my papers, and I wonder if we're missing some information there. And my third point concerns the schools capital programme, where I note there is a figure allowed of 19,171,000 for Monmouth Comprehensive School for a 1,600 place school. I brought this point up before, but I've never had a satisfactory answer. At the moment, there are something like 1,650 pupils attending Monmouth Comprehensive School. The school has an anticipated life of 60 years. We know that the growth forecast for Monmouthshire are 2% per year. Can I just ask the question, is the 1,600 place school, is the size of the school being limited by the budget, or do officers think that we only need a 1,600 place school, and if so, what's going to happen to the excess pupils who would presently attend that school? Thank you.
I think probably that question needs to be directed when we get to CYP Select, because we haven't got the officers here that have done that work. My understanding is that the estimates, the size of the schools have been determined based on the forecast pupil projections.
And the issue over the Appendix 1B?
Oh, sorry. I was just looking at that. I think the major pressures list, which is just below the current pressures list, should actually be titled Appendix 1B. And the heading of that has gone. Apologies for that.
Councillor Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I could just clarify a few of those bits on the school. Councillor Hayward asked whether it was the money that was determining the size of the school. No, it's not. But having said that, and Joy is absolutely right that it was on anticipated pupil numbers. And clearly it will need the appropriate officer to give the detail of that. But having said that it wasn't the money that was dictating the size of the school, given the restrictions on us now and the amount of funding from Welsh Government and our ability to raise other receipts, it wouldn't be possible to find the money to increase the size of it. But that's only subsequent to the original decision, which was based on pupil numbers.
Councillor Hayward.
Can I just query that report we've had, because we had a paper come before this committee saying that the anticipated need for the school in the year 2021 was 1,701 pupils, and that information has already been provided. So what's happened to the other 101? Have they suddenly decided they don't want to go to school, or were the figures in the previous report incorrect?
Joy.
Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to answer those questions. We need to go back to the person that brought that report to you and get them to give you the response.
It is an interesting subject, and I think it's right to be brought up, because essentially what you're saying is that you've cut your cloth to accommodate a specific number of children, and that is it, despite any anticipated needs. Now, I appreciate the offer isn't here, but we've heard from the cabinet member that is effectively it. This is the size of the school. There isn't any more money, so any anticipated need will not be fulfilled, and I find that quite worrying. And I do think that it is something that should be shared with this committee, obviously, as well as CYP.
Okay, we can ask for that to come forward then, and for further information and for the concerns to be addressed. But as I said, it won't be able to be done so at today's committee because we don't have the relevant officer, if that's okay. Are there any other questions, members? I'll go Councillor Edwards, followed by Councillor Prosser.
Yeah, either Deb or Ben mentioned a bungalow that has been passed over to social services. Where is that bungalow? There is a bungalow, of course, at King Henry VIII School, which they want to use. What is the latest on that particular point?
Yes, that's the correct bungalow. We're looking at doing the service with Property Services are going to look at just kitting that out in order for them to use it as a contact centre moving forward. That would alleviate the need for them to rent property in the area and reduces the services overheads.
Chair, yeah. There's been a review of all properties in Abergavenny. I don't know whether that review has finished. You employed consultants. It seems to me that there is quite a lot of property in Abergavenny, and have you made the right decision on the bungalow? Has the school a bigger use for it rather than social services? Since we own so much property in Abergavenny, couldn't that particular contact centre go elsewhere?
The school they originally declared the bungalow surplus to their requirements, and they were engaged with before we did any work with the social services guys to move them in. With regards to the property review, I think you're referring to the hubs debate.
No, the whole lot. It was a complete review of all the property in Abergavenny.
Yeah, as regards to review, we didn't employ any consultants to undertake that work. We've looked at that as the former accommodation working group with officers. We have been coming to conclusions on that. As you'll be aware, on the previous asset management plan report that went through Cabinet, we've looked to disband that group now formally and reconstitute it in line with the asset management plan that's just been agreed. So that work is ongoing, is about to be completed, and will be coming back to Cabinet as part of the review of the community hubs accommodation needs.
Councillor Prosser.
Chair, I just wanted to say thank you to the officers for the presentation. I thought it was presented in quite a good way and very readable, and sometimes we don't get it like that, but I'd like to say congratulations in this instance. It's well presented.
Thank you. I think we'd all agree with that. Thanks, Councillor Prosser. Are there any other members? Councillor Watts?
Pressing thing. Yeah, just on page 15, and forgive me for labouring this point, but it's on schools capital programme, and it clearly states, obviously, what the anticipated expenditure will be. And you note there on the top, bar there, it's from 2015, it takes you up to 2019. There's a complete gap when it comes to Thornmore Primary. So can I conclude from that there is no anticipated spend to bring that school up to 21st century standards?
Again, the answer to that question is probably better serviced through the CYP Select Committee when you have the appropriate officers there. My understanding is that there has been a capital programme piece of work done in Thornwell Primary, and the budget for that concludes this year, so there is no further future spend predicted within the 21st Century Schools programme in Band A.
Any other questions, members, or we'll move on to the second budget paper? Okay. Thank you for that, and thank you for the questions that were brought forward. If we can move on to the revenue budget proposals, please. Joy, thank you.
Yeah, just to set the context for your next debate around the specific mandates. So this is to put the revenue budget proposals in context. Members will be aware that we use a medium-term financial planning model which identifies what the gap is between your expenditure and your funding forecast over the next 4 years. And the model is based on using your base budgets uplifted for agreed assumptions around inflation, etc. The second part is your funding from Welsh Government and the assumptions around that. And the third part is your pressures. So members will be aware back in the early summer, Welsh Government announced that the indicative settlement figures that had been announced for 15-16 no longer stood, and that we would receive a reduction in funding. And the provisional settlement confirmed that, and our reduction in funding for next year is 4.3%. The pressures are highlighted in the report in 3.6, so that with the reduction in funding and the assumptions around the base budgets get modelled through the MTFP model, and the resulting effect is an additional £13.5 million gap. You'll recall that last year we set a medium-term financial plan that actually balanced. So we had, in effect, already identified for next year and for future years £7.2 million worth of savings. So in total, over the next 4 years, we're looking at the prospect of making £20.7 million worth of savings. And I wanted to make sure you understood that as the context to looking in detail at the mandates we're bringing forward to you today. We have focused more heavily this time on just looking at next year. So we have proposals for next year's budget. There's still a slight gap that we need to make good for 15-16, but in addition to that, there's obviously a wider gap going forward, which is in the region of 10 million. So that's the context within which you need to have your discussion and scrutiny over the mandates that are in front of you today. Some public engagement has already taken place, as you'll be aware, back in October, and that has influenced some of the mandates coming forward to you. This is obviously your opportunity to scrutinise the proposals. And I'd want to bring you back to the recommendations in the report, because it's also Selects Committee's opportunities to bring forward any alternative proposals that they might wish to a Cabinet to consider in terms of next year's budgets. Just a note then about the timescales going forward. We have tried to bring the budget process forward in order to give officers more time once the budget has been agreed to make sure that they can hit the ground running from the 1st of April and that the savings come in for a full year. So the intention is to bring final budget proposals back through Cabinet in January and through to Council on the 22nd of January. So that is, in effect, to give officers the requisite time to get the savings in place by the 1st of April. I don't really want to say much more than that. I'm happy to take general questions on the report, and then I'm sure the other officers can introduce the mandate specifically to you.
Thanks, Joy. I think it's a really useful scene-setting document and provides the context to what we're going to now have to scrutinise through the budget mandates. If I may, I've just got two brief questions, general top-line questions on this report. The first is that we're continuously the lowest per capita in terms of the funding that we receive, and there's a lot of note in here in terms of the increased pressures in terms of our social demographic and areas like that. Is there any way that, and I'm sure it's been happening in terms of trying to influence the process, that we can try and work out what those pressures are going to mean financially, and then try and put that as a business case forward for increased funding based on the increased sort of social pressures we face as a county? So that was my first question. And the other question was around the public engagement. And I note that there's 20 community ideas that have come forward, but they haven't been included in these proposals. Is that likely to come to fruition in the next financial year or the next round of we look at?
In terms of putting our case to Welsh Government, obviously we're one of 22 authorities. There is a mechanism by which local government as a whole gets together and puts forward what they perceive are the pressures on the whole of local government in Wales, and that goes through to Welsh Government through the Partnership Council that we have between Welsh Government and local government. We have made cases in the past for where Monmouthshire sits in terms of those funding levels. Not seen any direct consequence of those discussions, and we continue to feed back through the consultation process on the provisional settlement, and you'll see the letter that goes back to Welsh Government on that. In terms of your other question about the ideas, yes, we are continually looking at the ideas that are coming forward. Sometimes they need a bit more work in order to get them worked up for in a place where they can be contained in the budget. So we'll continue to look at any of the ideas that come forward from any, the public, other members, etc. Because, as I said before, we still have 10 million to find, so we are looking at every possible opportunity to make those savings.
Okay, thank you, Joy. Councillor Watts?
Only just on that point, I mean, what I would say is, if you want evidence to the Assembly that, so basically what you're trying to do is make them aware of the increased level of deprivation across the county, and that's what you're saying, isn't it? And then obviously explain that to them in the hope that they'll give you some additional assistance. Have you looked at the food bank figures? So, for example, in Chepstow this year, 10% of the population, we have a population of 15,000, and 1,500 people are now using food bank. In the last quarter, 127 of those were children. So is that being attempted? Has anybody thought about that?
The funding settlement is based on a complex formula which does take into account deprivation, and there are various elements of the formula which seek to try and identify those. Obviously, it's all relative, so I'm sure other authorities would have the same issues as you do in Monmouthshire in terms of their deprivation and rising levels of deprivation, and it is sought to try and capture that through the funding formula, but it's relative, so we may not be as highly a deprived area as some others, in which case the funding formula seeks to try and fairly distribute resources across Wales.
On the back of that, though, I mean, I always, on the back, there's a lot of debate about cost of living crisis, and it's the same in all our towns, but I would argue it's always harder to be poor in Monmouthshire because the cost of living is so significantly higher. I mean, a simple thing, like if you go to Tesco's and you shop in Tesco's, it's going to cost you more to shop in Tesco's in Chepstow than it would if you went to Spitty. If you wanted to rent a property in Chepstow, it costs you more to rent a property. So there's kind of clear arguments. Is there any way that we can get them to wake up to that the deprivation is greater because the cost of living is more extensive?
And I think it wasn't, as well as deprivation, which obviously is key, it's also the ageing population, and we've got a hugely, I know everywhere's got an ageing population, but we seem to have an increased levels compared to other counties, so it's just trying to bring that together. Councillor Murphy.
Joy referred to a letter that we send out. We do send a response to the settlement every year in which we point all of these things out. It's widely available to members. Joy beats the gong in the Society of Welsh Treasurers. I do it with the finance members. The leader is on some committees within the WLGA that feed directly into Welsh Government. We are on about this all the time. But we are one vote out 22, and when it comes to the crunch, we get outvoted.
Thank you. Members, any other questions on this paper? Councillor Dovey?
It's the school's budgets here, and the fact that there is going to be an impact because of falling numbers. There is an issue at the moment going on with the numbers within the schools, the catchment areas for the schools, and I want to note the point that in Chepstow we have a serious issue with Chepstow School, where the catchment area is inadequate to service the numbers that the school should be have to take the plan forward for 21st century schools. That is an issue, but it's also a significant issue with regard to the budget for the school. And the problem is now the sins of the past are there, and the present school management, if you like, are struggling and need all the help that they can get from the county to put this right.
Councillor Murphy?
Yes, Chair. In the absence of members from the CYP Directorate, there is a considerable amount of work currently being done with regard to schools' catchments that will affect pupil numbers in every school, particularly Chepstow School, where that situation is recognised. In actual fact, Chepstow School has been very successful latterly in increasing its pupil numbers, particularly those who were going across the border to Wydeen are coming back. The numbers are looking a lot healthier. The big problem in Chepstow School is historical regarding previously unwise budgetary decisions within that school, and there's a recovery programme in place which hopefully will bring that together quite soon. But members can be assured there's a lot going on with regard to Chepstow School at the moment, particularly with regard to pupil numbers.
Okay, I'll just go back to Councillor Dovey.
I acknowledge what Councillor Murphy says, that there is work going on within the catchment at the moment. But the fact of the matter is that other schools and their local members, and it's understandable why they hold this position, they don't want to see any change in their catchment areas from where they are at the moment. And it is proven to be within this committee or this working group that has been set up very difficult to get any movement that will better support, if you like, Chepstow School. I acknowledge what Councillor Murphy says, but it is not going well at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Dovey. Just to inform members that CYP Select will be discussing the area catchment review in the new year. Councillor Watts.
It was purely a financial kind of question relating to Chepstow School. I remember 4 years ago, Chepstow School had one of the highest deficits of any comprehensive, certainly in Monmouthshire. Well, it was and comparably against the other comprehensives in Wales, it was up in the top 10. Now that was in the 200,000 mark. And then it changed, and almost overnight, it was almost a miraculous recovery. In fact, it just kind of got rid of the debt, and I was amazed, but I was pleased, genuinely pleased. However, this year, as from out of nowhere, we now find that the school is now in to about 326. I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong. debt. Now, that's got to be by far the highest level of debt of any single comprehensive in Monmouthshire. Now, I appreciate, you know, the points that Councillor Dovey rightly points out. There is migration of about 300 children every day. You see them migrate over the bridge to the academy school, and that school itself has its own problems. But I would say that there's a kind of financial crisis at that school. I've never seen, I'm not aware, I haven't seen the figures for the rest of Wales relating to debt, but that has got to be certainly the highest debt of any single comprehensive I've ever seen. And I'd like to know what you anticipate you're going, you know, what are your plans? I know you've got a recovery plan, but goodness me, £326,000 is a dire situation for any comprehensive.
I'll take Councillor Dudley as well before there's any response.
Well, what is really, as I am a governor of Chepstow School, for start, but the issue that really strikes me is the article in the front of the Free Press, and the facts for it have obviously come from in the council here. And it says, basically, it had been expected that the school would be £352,000 in the red. And now the total is expected to be 373,000 at the end of the year, 21,000 previously thought. I have to say that the governors of the school are extraordinarily anxious about this. And we really do have a very competent bursar, if you like, there, and people supporting this. And this is a real issue. And I would like to believe that it would be handled with perhaps even more urgency than maybe it is at the moment by the council.
If I may, I'd like to ask Councillor Murphy to respond to the points that both of you have made, if that's okay.
All I'm in a position to say at the moment, Chair, is there is a lot of help currently being given to Chepstow School. The detail of that help is clearly with the officers in the CYP Directorate, and if they were here, I'm sure they could share far more detail with you. I know that Mark Howcroft has been closely involved in this process, and he may be able to give slightly more detail than I can without the relevant papers.
Okay, Mark, if you would.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, I acknowledge Councillor Dovey's opinion, those of the governing body, that actually a lot of the issues related to Chepstow are they believe related to the size of the catchment. It would be fair to say that it's the smallest catchment secondary school in Monmouthshire. I don't necessarily think that makes it unsustainable, and actually one of the prospects that we're looking to do is I'm actually attending their finance meeting on the 8th to actually explore some of the items that they may consider in terms of putting together a robust recovery plan for that 350,000, but I acknowledge that the size of the deficit means that it's going to have to be a fairly significant change.
Sorry to I don't want to hog the meeting, but it is a matter of some importance that there is already, I mean, what we've gone from is no debt into suddenly, I'm sure it's not overnight, but it seems that way, into an incredibly, I mean, it's more than I quoted. You're saying that in the article it anticipates that the debt will be up to £370,000. That is a phenomenal amount of money for any school to be in debt by. I mean, how can you put a recovery plan in place when the debt is that significant? And when you say that the catchment, there's no improvement on catchment. So my concern is that, you know, there will be staff cuts, and that will obviously affect obviously the quality of the education that the children get. I mean, I'm looking for some reassurance that won't happen, but how do you anticipate doing that? I mean, when the school has probably already got a recovery plan, it has to legally. You can't simply set a deficit budget. That's illegal. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, the responsibility to set a recovery plan is the governing bodies first and foremost. I'm there to actually help them in their deliberations as to how they might provide a more robust financial budget going forward, and actually part of the considerations of that likely will be staffing, because obviously with any school about 80% of those costs relate to staff. It'd be fair to say that I don't work in a CYP environment. I don't necessarily understand the perspectives of the governing body yet, or their deliberations to be able to volunteer an opinion without actually attending that meeting and understanding that in a better fashion. No, it didn't put me on the spot. And actually, what I prefer to do is to walk a mile in someone's shoes before actually coming to a judgment about these things.
Okay, I've got Councillor Hayward followed by Councillor Higginson, but just to mention, obviously this is going to be covered by CYP, and I think we'd like the concerns that our members have raised here, raised with the chair of that committee, and obviously those that are members will have the opportunity, but it'd be useful to have that information and a report back once it's been discussed in CYP. But if I go Councillor Hayward, Councillor Higginson, and then Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we'll get away from the schools. I'm trying to understand better the overall figure of the settlement, and I'm referring now to Councillor Murphy's letter on page 38-39, which was the provisional local government settlement, the response. At the first sentence of the last paragraph, despite the fact that the reasons for the low settlement are both known and understood, I'm not sure that members fully understand them or know them. And then in the third paragraph, when comparing like for like, Monmouthshire's reduction is 4.3%. I'm looking for some sort of clarification on both these statements. I'm trying to find, is our settlement from the Welsh Government, what's it based on? Is it a lump sum settlement? Because if it's a lump sum settlement, we all know that Monmouthshire has one of the fastest growth rates in Wales. We're growing at 2% of the population per year. So if the population is growing but the settlement is staying the same, then the figures that are quoted before about the settlement per head will naturally fall down. But it doesn't necessarily mean that our costs will increase. I mean, the cost of the chief executive will stay the same whether the population goes 5% or 10%. So we got a lot of fixed costs there. Or are the settlement figures based on population? Is it some sort of formula like the Barnett formula, which brings in members of population, deprivation, all this sort of thing? In which case, why is it when we've got a fast growth that our settlement isn't increasing in proportion to our population? And I guess the question I'm asking really, is the increase in population beneficial to us, or is it a hindrance in the amount of money we get? Thank you, Chair.
Yep.
I'll try and take those questions. In terms of the low settlement, there was a previous Cabinet report which identified the announcement by Welsh Government back in June, which effectively said that the original indicative settlements, it was about 1.5% reduction, I think, no longer stood, and it was going to be more like 4.5% reduction, and that was based on a report that they'd had about the NHS in Wales and the need for further funding to be directed at the NHS. So that's what that sentence meant, really, that we understood that the reason it had changed was because Welsh Government had decided that more funding needed to go into the health service for next year, so our settlement obviously reduced. The settlement then, so the settlement, the size of the settlement is, you know, if you think of it as a cake, it needs to be shared between the 22 local authorities, and the way that that's done is by a formula, and that does take into account population figures. So it's obviously relative. You know, we may have increases in population, but others may have similar increases in population. So the shares of that cake are all relative. And in a decreasing size of the whole cake, we're going to get less money. So although it takes account of it in terms of what share we get, when the whole cake is reducing, we're going to get less money. I hope that explains it.
Thanks, Chair. If I can just come back. I understand the point you make there about if the cake gets smaller, then obviously the overall share will get smaller. But it's our proportion of the cake. If our population is increasing, do we get a bigger slice of the cake or do we get a smaller slice?
We will get a bigger slice, but it depends on how much other local governments, local authorities' population is increasing also. So we have a 2% increase in population and they have a 2% increase in population. Nothing changes effectively because the shares stay the same.
If I get back in, yes, just to clarify, I did say, though, that we have one of the biggest population growths. We have been growing over the last 10 years consistently at over 2% per annum. So our growth is increasing compared to counties like Blaenau, Gwent, Merthyr or Caerphilly. But we never seem to be catching up on the amount per head. We're always bottom of the graph that you show us every year. We're always way down at the bottom. How much has our population got to grow in order that we can get off the bottom and move up the scale a bit?
The formula takes into account lots of different indicators, so it's not just about population. I've already mentioned, the deprivation indicators, so numbers of the population on claiming benefits, etc., are also taken into account. Pupil numbers are taken into account. Population over a certain age, it's all taken into account in the various different service sections of the formula. So it's not just about population, and all those relative different factors get mixed together and calculate the amount that we eventually receive.
Councillor Higginson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a couple of points. First of all, in relation to school deficits, we wouldn't be... The audit committee of this council, we look at these particular issues very, very closely, and if we do it again, it won't be the first time when we've had school governors come to an audit committee meeting to explain, why are they in deficit and what they intend to do about it. And I appreciate what happens with the, within the education service, particularly as Mark mentioned, that there are people on the financial side who call in school governors to find out, what you're going to do about this deficit. So, but similarly, I just make the point that audit committee does it as well. In relation to, to the points that Councillor Hayward made, whether we like it or not, unfortunately, we got the Barnett formula, and successive governments have refused to do anything about it, and I don't know why, I have to say. But there are other things, that are slightly on our side, I think, with the additional housing, and it's referenced in here, in this document that we have today, the additional housing is producing additional receipts, council tax receipts. So that is in part, I believe, is in our favour. And I just want to make that comment. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Higginson. Councillor Edwards, and then Councillor Watts.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. About 4 items I want to talk about. Can I briefly talk about the Chepstow issue? Jim has just raised the issue of it going, that the audit committee would look at this from time to time. In fact, I think it's on this afternoon's agenda, and I think it specifically mentions Chepstow. So I think the audit committee will be looking at that this afternoon, because there is an internal audit report on the issue. Question to Joy. It's depressing when I read the reserve strategy from 323 through to 326. We start off with 13.2 million of reserves, and we're going to end up, by the look of it, with something less than 4 million. At some point or other, Joy, there is a minimum that we are allowed to do, that anybody can go to. When do we reach that point, and when do you have to start reporting the issue to the higher authorities?
Okay, if I can pick up the question about reserves. The paragraphs in 3.2, etc., are talking about earmarked reserves. So they're reserves set aside to overcome specific issues, and are set aside for rainy days and risks that we might be facing. So I guess it's appropriate that in these days, when we're facing reduced budgets, that we do make use of these reserves to try and make the changes that we need to make in order to set the council on a sustainable financial strategy going forward. They don't talk in there about the general reserve, which is being maintained at the prudent level. Otherwise, as you say, I would need to be coming to report to members that we have a problem there, but that is being maintained. What we're doing here is using our earmarked reserves, which we have set aside for rainy days, and it is pouring, so it seems appropriate and that we use those wisely and well going forward so that we can make the changes that we need to.
Thank you, Ian Saunders, head of Tourism, Leisure and Culture. Yeah, the response to it is that we are looking to maintain the partnership at the Tithe Barn. We feel has gone really well and is an opportunity to really increase the offer across the different towns we have in Monmouthshire. I think of all the towns, the Tithe Barn partnership is one that we'd like to replicate. So we've got in our proposals to increase volunteers, the successful ambassadors scheme that we've put in place. I think Nicola Edwards, the tourism managers there, that might want to comment on the excellent work being done there and how we're intending to incorporate those into the offer. So I think I'll hand over to Nicola just because she is in the room.
Yes, I would agree with what Ian said, really, that our TIC in Abergavenny is probably, a best case example, and that's that sort of an example is something that we would choose to replicate if we could in our other towns. It's been a very effective partnership, and it's working very well. So as long as we continue to get the contributions from other partners to that service, we would look to continue it, and we've certainly included our contribution to that service in our proposals for next year.
The other item I wanted some assurances on is over the community hubs, item number 28, which is the community hubs and contact centre. Can I have an assurance from possibly you, Debs, I'm not sure if it's in your area, that this will not be decided until early February? I am chair of the Brainicum Area Committee. I was going to call an area meeting, but I've been assured by Sarah that no decision will be made until early February. I think it's a cabinet meeting in February. Can I have assurance that's going to happen? Otherwise, I would need to call a special meeting of the Brainicum Area Committee.
Councillor Edwards, there's two items that need to be considered in terms of the community hubs proposal. The first one being the actual budget mandate itself. And as I think Joy earlier referred to, that's actually going to be for decision on the 22nd of January. So that will be an earlier decision than February. As regards the actual staffing complement, it was agreed in Cabinet yesterday to accept the proposals that were put forward by Strong Community Select. Therefore, no decision will be made on the staffing component of both either the community hubs or the library service until such time the budget mandate has been approved or not.
I think Kelly wanted to come in, if that's okay, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to confirm what Deb has already said, really, but I think in that case, Councillor, you probably will want to convene a special meeting of the Area Committee.
Yeah, thank you for the information. Yes, I will do so.
I'll move on to Councillor Watts, and then I'm minded, unless there's any other burning questions, because we're moving into the summary list of budget savings, which essentially is the budget mandate papers. We'll then move on to budget mandates, unless there's any other questions. But Councillor Watts.
Yeah, on 45, really, there were 2 points, and I wanted to come on to council tax, and Phil will know what that question is, as I ask the same question every year. But the transformation of children's services, special needs, additional needs, and obviously the increase in savings as the years go on, when we've just spoken about the identified increase in capacity, I can't see how that, it's almost as if it's going to be some kind of magic. You know, we've got an increase in need and we're going to make additional savings, and I'd like to know how that restructuring affects the service really, and how you anticipate making those savings. That's my first question.
I think the detail of that, the mandate will actually go to CYP Select Committee, so that's probably the best place for those questions to be answered, because the relevant officers will be there to be able to answer those questions.
I mean, I say that respect, I totally appreciate what you say, but these are difficult times. These are obviously issues that affect all wards, and it certainly affects this committee. I'm kind of disappointed that we haven't got that level of information available to us, because there are obviously kind of key cost implications. My other point is, though, about council tax savings. Year upon year, we have a debt of around about £3.6 million floating around the authority, and I think per household it costs, on a Band D, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, about £96 historically. That's what the impact of that debt is. I understand also, and Phil and I have had a meeting about this previously, that we have 3 people in an office collecting this amount of money. When I've asked the officer in charge, he, as officers always do, said he would like possibly a few more staff, and that might improve the odds on me, you know, actually pulling this money. When I looked at the debt, and it was spread across mainly Band Cs and Band Ds, as you might expect, there was still a considerable amount of money in Band Is. If you're a Band I, I'd say in Monmouthshire on paper you're close to being quite a wealthy person, and I'm surprised about that, why we haven't collected that. So is there any scope, and it is, you know, you say it's about bringing ideas, is there any scope on employing maybe a few more people in that specific department to pull in that debt? Have things changed this year? Is there any anticipated differences about how you're going to do things that are going to improve that collection of the debt? That's my broad question. So, you know, Phil knows I ask the same question every year, but here it is again. Thank you.
Joy.
I'll do it if you like, Chair. And it's the same answer. We collect in excess of 99.5. Oh, sorry, it wasn't supposed to be on anyway. We collect in excess of 99.5% of our council tax. We hardly write off anything. We only write off people who have disappeared, died, or gone bankrupt. We're doing that with the present level of staffing. Everybody would like to have additional members of staff thrown at it. The budget doesn't justify it when we're collecting at such a higher rate.
Sorry, with respect, the debt stays about the same, and if Joy's probably going to tell me it's gone down remarkably this year, but you know, it beggars belief that we've got 3 people in an office collecting 3. I mean, I couldn't anticipate chasing down, I'm sure any business, if I had debts of that man, having 3 people in an office chasing that would be quite incredible. And he hasn't really addressed my points about the people who possibly, I appreciate you can be asset rich and income poor, but on paper, certainly seem to be a wealthy, in a more prosperous place than some of those people on Band Cs and Band Ds, and the high proportion of debt. I don't know if he bothers to look at those papers or looks at it or gives it that kind of scrutiny, but it is significant. And at the end of the day, if you manage to pull it in, you save people's jobs, you provide a service to this authority, you can save teachers' jobs, provide better services and social services. Is that real? And I'm disappointed about the answer, because it's the same answer as I anticipated I got last year.
I'll ask Councillor Murphy to come back to you, then Councillor Watts.
If the debt was fixed and then we had to reduce it, that would be one thing. This is a debt which is constantly being replaced, and it's never the same amount owed by the same people every year. And where it is, they're on recovery plans. If we take somebody to court and the court says they can pay a £5 a month, it takes us years to recover it. So the debt is constantly being replaced. It depends when you look at it. At the end of March, it tends to be around that sort of figure. If you go into April, it's 40 odd million. You know, it's a case of timing, and it's the fact that it is constantly being replaced. It's not one fixed figure that you then go out and collect.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that's probably not always going to be the response you want, Councillor Watson. There's going to be a difference of opinion on this one. Joy?
I was just going to supplement what Councillor Murphy has said, which is absolutely right. We have managed, because we've been doing a restructure in the revenue section at the moment, to put one more additional staff resource into the recovery section. So they will be focusing very much on the higher end debts that we have. They might not necessarily be in higher end properties, but they will be looking at those debts in some great detail. So we have managed to put in a resource for a temporary period of time for that purpose.
Okay, I'm going to move this on to the budget mandate paper shortly. Just a couple of brief points. We've raised a number of issues that fall into other remits, such as CYP and strong communities, and all our members here are welcome to attend those committees, and I'm sure we'd be welcome to input into those as we do so. The other point I wanted to make was just a comment on the paper. Could we potentially in the future have, I mean, there's a Wales bill coming forward, which is going to have huge implications for the way local authorities run, potential for tax raising revenue through things like devolution of business rates, and also lots of implications through potentially the Part 2 of Silk Commission coming forward, which is going to see further devolution in areas potentially like energy. And again, that could have an implication for us in terms of a threat, but also an opportunity. And I think there's not any reference to these potential threats coming forward. So maybe just referencing that in the future papers. Just one other point, members. I think we're struggling to pick up some of you in terms of the video conferences. If you could speak into your microphones and just make sure they're in front of you when speaking. Councillor Green, and did you indicate you wanted to speak? Because I'm keen to move this item on then.
Yes, if I can, Madam Chair. It's just really a remark that I heard earlier on about the amount of money that Monmouthshire gets and when is it likely that we are likely to get up to the sort of figures of others. Well, as I think was said, I don't think we'll ever get there, because it is biased, the formula is biased against us in particular. And the total central government support that we get per head of population this year is £1,137. And we can afford, under our system, to employ 29 members of 29 members of staff per 1,000 of population. Compare that to Denbighshire, which is seen as a very efficient council in many ways, has very similar level of population to ourselves, receives a grant in Denbighshire for this year of £1,502 to deliver its services, and has a staff ratio of 41.9. Now, when you look at those figures, it is quite clear that we are stretched. In fact, we are the lowest ratio of staff to population by some considerable way in the whole of Wales. We have to be, because our settlement is so low, and there is no way that we are going to get the Welsh Government to change that, because other councils are not going to be very happy to actually put money in the way of Monmouthshire at their expense. So, frankly, the system is unfair. We have to put up with it. But quite clearly, that means that we have to work in an entirely different way. And frankly, if other councils in Wales had to deal with the level of support that we get, there wouldn't be a problem in Wales. We would be able to manage without any reorganisations, without any further cutbacks, because there would be a far fairer distribution of the wealth that we get. And that is where we in Monmouthshire are so hamstrung.
There's a cheeky response, really, Chair. I mean, it is an interesting debate. It's an ongoing debate, but interestingly, Denbighshire have a really good collection rate of council tax. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move it on now. I think the key thing is we need to tell that story because there's some really important information there, and I think it's useful that our residents are aware of that situation at every opportunity. Okay, should we move on to the first budget mandate? And I'm assuming Ian's going to present us with this one. If you wouldn't mind just outlining the service, what its remit is, what it does, and then talking specifically about the mandate and then the risk from some of the proposals within it.
Thank you. Yes, the service predominantly for leisure centres. We've also got an outdoor education service which is involved in the leisure provision, but most of the savings in front of you today are based upon leisure centre delivery, leisure services operations and sports development. Obviously we deliver a wide range of programmes throughout supporting health and wellbeing in the community. We've got a vibrant sports development team, we've got an exercise referral team, and we've got dual use facilities on the comprehensive sites which are well used and are well supported by the local communities. Our fitness provision is very near and we mirror private sector in delivery inside the fitness suites, and they're responding very well to the financial situation we're facing. So the proposals in front are a mixture of efficiency savings, staffing restructures, and also some additional income opportunities that have been identified by the teams. I have with me today Richard Simpkins, our Business Development Manager, who will also be interjecting from time to time. So I'm not sure how you want to proceed with this, whether you would like me to go through each line, or whether you just want to ask some questions around the mandates.
If you could just outline the main proposals, and then we'll take questions on that.
The main proposals, the staff remodelling exercise is detailed on page, I think it's on page between 10 and 11 on my print anyway, and explains the different levels and layers of staff that is impacting on the savings for the staff in particular. The opportunity to go down to 2 area-based managers, north and south, is one that has been experimented before by the service. However, at that time we didn't have agile working, we didn't have the modern methods of communication, and I think some of the support of a central team, which we now have in place, will really mean that the service thrives and not too much of a detriment to the service. The fact that we are losing 2 senior managers of great experience. Duty officers posts, we do have 3 duty officers operating on 3 of the sites. One site, Monmouth, has 3.5 posts, which we're looking to take back to the same, so it's consistent delivery across the 4 sites. The administration is an opportunity there to look at modern ways of working, look at the systems through systems thinking, but also look at the needs, and really we do feel that the administration and clerical support that can be provided by less. There's no easy way of saying this. We're a close-knit family in leisure services, and these are experienced people that we are, looking and moving. Hopefully they will get redeployment elsewhere in the council, and that will obviously be our first priority. However, it's part of the package to save £420,000. So, we've had to make some tough decisions. Some of the efficiencies are looking at reviewing our caretaking model and also our contractual agreements with Regent Cleaning and other providers. So again, there's some clear indications there of how what we're trying to achieve. I think there's some quite large income targets there, which this year we were faced with £120,000 of increased income. We came in front of you last year and said we would achieve what we put forward, and we're doing it this year, and we're confident again moving into next year that these are achievable. Some of the success stories around the memberships, and in particular the swimming, which we deliver in a slightly different way now through a direct debit scheme, has proved very, very popular, both with our customers and obviously with the children that get the service, but also the service has realised that there's less administration needed for collecting some of that income if there's direct debits going. So that's positive as well. I think that's possibly enough from me. Obviously, there will be questions, so happy to take them.
Thanks very much, Ian. That's really helpful. Councillor White.
Thank you, Chairman. I have asked this question before when it was mooted, the reduction of staff contracted to cleaning hours. It is a big reduction, I believe, considering the use of the premises, how many people use it and what it's used for. So what I would like to ask is, who checks the quality of the cleanliness at the end of the week? And have you got a checklist of things that really need addressing?
Thank you. Yes, we have regular quality checks with the manager on the site, and the duty officers walk around the site with the company and go through quite a comprehensive checklist of different parts of the building. And obviously our customers tell us very quickly if things are not as they should be.
Of course, Councillor White.
Thank you. I'm pleased to hear that, because there was talk that the staff themselves were going to be doing some of the cleaning. Beg your pardon? Oh, yeah. And that's a worry, because their role is totally different to cleaning. And I was just interested to see how this was panning out. And you have told me that it's working well, and I will go along with that. Thank you.
Okay, I've comment, and then I'll come to Councillor Watts. If I'm totally honest, I think the income generation side of things actually could be more ambitious. I think you've got a great team and you've been really successful in what you've achieved so far, and I think we could almost push that more. There's some real opportunities, I think, around the commercial and corporate links that we could expand on. You've identified a few things, I don't know, prenatal exercise, that sort of thing, where you could, expand on that growing market. Let's use a pen. And also, there's lots of other opportunities through the personal training which you've identified. But I just think, as a steer, it might be worth looking at that and maybe even pushing that potential income generation figure upwards. I know there's a risk associated with that, but I think you're doing a good job, and I think it'd be great just to see that looked at even further. Councillor Watts?
Experience of it is that the staff are superb, the staff that you have in there are very knowledgeable, you always feel safe in there, they're a mixed group of people that use the gym, and I always think that's great. And like you talked about some of the gyms in the private sector, which just tend to be the beautiful people, the bronze people with lots of big muscles and whatever, not flabby people like me. They're a mixed kind of demographic, but you always feel that when you have potentially some vulnerable people in there, some people there with specific needs, they're always well assisted, and that's commendable. The increase obviously in membership is been brilliant. I was sceptical, but you've done it, well done. Yeah, I'd like to think you'd be. The only thing I would say, which I think is in light of the quality of staff and the knowledge and the job spec that the staff do have when they're setting out training programs or whatever, to see them coming along with a dustpan and brush, I always think it's a little bit demeaning, if I'm honest. But it is what it is, isn't it? So I don't know. I mean, I wish you well with it, but I'd hate to see any further redundancies. I hate to see any of those staff lost, because they are really, really good.
Okay, Councillor Edwards?
Yeah, can I just add to what Alan has just already said, as far as the Leisure Centre in Abergavenny is concerned, my association with them is the annual sort of Olympic athletics meeting that we have with all the primary schools, and the wonderful service that we get from the staff at the Leisure Centre. Just one other point, though, delete the contribution to caretaking at Abergavenny Leisure Centre and KHS Comprehensive. Are there any caretakers left in the school? Who looks after what there?
Yes, there are caretakers in the school, and they do open and close some of the leisure facilities. So it's something that we're in negotiation, but I think that it will benefit the school as well, because they can re-provide. We're not talking about caretakers losing jobs there. I think there's a use more useful for the school in that, rather than leisure.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Hayward?
Thank you, Chair. And thanks, Ian. It's not a question on the budget so much here. It's one just so we can have some information. we all know the success that we've had with the pool in Monmouth and the fitness suite in Monmouth and the extra income this has generated. And I note that you're hoping to generate the same sort of income out of the 3G pitch at Caldicot. But you recognise that there's a high risk and there's a danger in there. Then, in fact, you might need seed money to get the initiative off the ground. I know it's subjective and it's just your opinion, really. Is the success of the fitness suite and the success of the pool driven by a need from the public? Or was it the fact that we introduced £300,000 worth of new equipment and we benefited the facility in such a way that we attracted the public to come there? Which comes first, the public need or providing a good facility which attracts the public? Because obviously this will depend, it should affect the capital budget as well. If there is no pressure on a 3D pitch, then it doesn't matter how much you spend on the money to improve it, you're not going to bring the public. So which comes first?
I think you need to provide quality facilities at all times. I think aspirational facilities that people want to come and spend time in, not just to exercise, but to be social in as well. I think it's really important that we do provide that offer. I think from the 3G pitch in Caldicot, that is going to be an exceptional facility. I think it's going to be a facility that's used far and wide, not just as a local facility, but a regional facility. I think we'll definitely, as per a lot of things in Caldicot, put Caldicot more on the map as regards to bringing Welsh youth teams to play down there. There are a little bit more investment needed at Caldicot, maybe for changing facilities, and just to make sure that the standards are available to make sure that teams can use it appropriately. If you're talking about certain leagues playing there needs to be separate changing rooms for referees and different types of things that maybe we need to look at. But as far as the initial pitch going in there, we're certainly going to have a lot of people want to use that facility. Don't know if I've answered the question. So it's about facilities, though. It's certainly about facilities. Do you think we need more money for marketing to get people in, or?
To be honest, Ian, you made a good attempt. I'm not sure what I was asking, so if you're not sure what you're replying, I think that's a fair enough answer. No, I'm content with your answer. It's something I just wanted to know, because it's got to be a difficult assessment. Do we provide first-class facilities and believe that that's going to increase the income, or do we provide first-class facilities because we think that's what the public deserves, or do we provide rubbish income, rubbish facilities, but at least then we maximise the income per money spent? And I know it is subjective, and I'm not expecting you to give an answer off the cuff in front of this meeting. What you gave was as good as my question anyway.
Facility will be superb. I mean, currently I know some of the dads at my son's school, they go to Newport to use the 3G pitch, and Caldicot will cash in, but they won't have to go so far. It will be significant. It will be a prominent part of Monmouthshire's kind of footballing culture, if you like, and people will use it. So I'd anticipate it would be really popular.
Councillor Dovey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think Councillor Hayward's point is, in a way, it's not what comes first. If it's there already and it's doing well, you have to monitor it constantly. The other thing is you need to be finding taking the users into account regularly and listening to what they want. You will sure as hell know what is right and what is wrong when you see your decremental figures, if you like, going out through the door. So I think it isn't a case of one coming before the other. I think with fitness, it is you've got to think about the sort of people that are really the hardcore of the thing, and it is very much a quality item for them, and they spend a lot of kit getting to look the part, be able to take part in the exercises. as well as they possibly can. So I think you need to, it's a case of if you've got it, you've got to listen to what they want, and when you can, and if it's reasonable, when you can afford it, implement it, because then they feel they're being cared for, listened to, and they get a certain sort of ownership of the facility they use. And you start that to build up with people that meet regularly to go there, and you start groups be developed. The only reason I know this is I belong to a club which I never use, but that is one of the things. Well, I don't. I'm highly toned. But is it highly toned? Well, I'm something anyhow. Something to do with high. But they monitor constantly what is the latest thing, what is the latest fashion. They sell the fashion things as well, and it's constantly monitoring what's new to the industry and what their customer base wants. And if it's good, it'll grow.
Thank you, Councillor Dovey. I think, there's a real push at the moment from the Health Minister on things such as prudent healthcare, and our leisure services have a huge role to play in that, and potentially have an opportunity either to tap into funding or to have income generation, as has been mentioned. And I think we want to put on record thanks for the support and the work that you've done in this area, because there has been some really good progress. And I think we'd be really keen to see a report come forward on leisure services performance, so that we can have another discussion around maybe inputting some of our ideas, because a lot of us use the leisure services ourselves. So that would be great if that could come forward. In terms of this mandate then, can I ask members, unless there's any other comments that you wish to make, would you support the proposals? Clearly, obviously, there's issues in there, and it's things that we wouldn't necessarily want to see in an ideal world, but given the current climate that we have, the financial climate we're in, are we supportive of the proposals within this? Okay, thank you, members. We'll move on to the second budget mandate then, please, and that's the museums, castles, TICs and tourism. Ian, is that you or Nicola? Or,
If I start and then probably hand over to the experts in the room that we brought in today. Is that okay? So this is a mixture, as it says in the title, of the whole of the cultural side, including tourist information, the castles and the museums, and also countryside do feature into it, just because of the way they were aligned with the attractions. And I think in my restructure that is going through at the moment, the alignment of the attraction side will come from countryside and go back into leisure business management, to look at a more commercial approach to driving income through the attractions that we have. And we're talking about Shire Hall, Old Station, and the castle on that. Again, there's a mixture here of different ideas that have come forward from the different services. It might be best if I get those officers to speak through their various ideas and obviously the mandates for you, rather than me go through them all. So, Rachel, do you want to start with where you are?
Yeah, if I take the ones associated with museums, which might mean a bit of skipping around the document, so apologies for that. On page 3 of the document, you can see that one of the things that we're proposing is developing a coordinated site approach to wedding packages. And that would cover museums and the attractions, so principally Tintern Old Station, Abergavenny Castle, Shire Hall and Caldecott Castle. We're also looking at the opening hours, you'll see in the box below, at all of the sites, so that they're more in line with modern visitor needs. We currently market our all of the services, attractions, museums, quite separately, and clearly there are some savings and improvements to be made if we work together much more closely. There's a couple of specific posts that we've identified. A museum fundraiser currently exists within the museum service and is on a grant-funded post until January. and we would like to look at using the expertise that we've gained there within the museum service and moving that across the all of the sites and attractions there. Likewise, we have a learning officer that's currently on a temporary post and looking just at museums, but again there are some synergies to be made between museums and attractions and using that expertise, which is obviously as well as improving the core offer of learning, is an opportunity for income generation as well. I think that covers all of the ones specifically for museums and the ones that we're involved in. So if I ask Nicola to elaborate a little bit more on the ones associated with tourism, and then perhaps we do collect questions at the end. Is that okay?
Okay, there are 3 proposals in here that relate specifically to the tourism service. The first of those involves using trained ambassadors within our TIC service in a voluntary role, with the aim of achieving savings of in the region of about £10,000. The second proposal involves developing a shared service model for Chepstow TIC in the same way that we've developed for Abergavenny. Now I know we've submitted a proposal to Chepstow Town Council requesting a contribution to the TIC service in Chepstow, and I haven't had a formal response, but I understand that a contribution is being offered, not at the level that we'd originally proposed, which means we will have to relook at our budgets to see what we can do with that reduced contribution and the opening hours that we can sustain. And the third area, or the third proposal that relates to the tourism service, is looking at the potential to generate income through rental of Red Square window in Abergavenny, which is a high-profile window in Abergavenny High Street. And we're looking or aiming to secure approximately £3,000 from that.
The other one is the green screen. Do you want to just explain that? There's 20,000 on that.
Right, okay, yes. In terms of, sorry, I didn't cover that because the income for that will go into the attractions budget, so it won't be a savings on the tourism. Under the MON 53 RDP funded Welcome Monmouthshire project, we've commissioned a company to develop green screen experiences at 6 of our MCC attractions, and those obviously will help improve the experience for visitors to those sites, so improve the offer at those sites, but also will help generate income for those sites as well to make them more sustainable.
Okay, Councillor Watts by Councillor White, if that's okay. Sorry, Ian, did you have anything else you wanted to raise? Sorry.
Yeah, I guess my concern would be the development of volunteers. Basically, it's a kind of form of employment, but on the cheap. And I think you kind of get what you pay for. Whilst I appreciate the intentions are probably good here, and you claim they will receive some kind of training. What I'm worried about is the quality that we have, which again you're pouring more good stuff on the existing service, because it is, the people that work in our TICs are brilliant. You go elsewhere, if you go to Bath or wherever you want to go, and you ask for information. I think the people we have are good at what they do, but they're very passionate. Yeah, there is an intangible aspect to the people we employ, and I don't often say that, but they've been doing it for years. They do it not for the money, they do it purely because they enjoy doing it. My concern is that you'll dilute that for a very small amount of money, and I think that by diluting it, obviously it reduces the service, and my point is that it's an exceptionally good service. I don't want to see that change. Also, I'm not entirely sure how you train these people to ensure that they're given an appropriate information and signposting people in the correct fashion. If there's a cost implication for that, I don't know if that's factored in. But I mean, we don't know how many people you're anticipating training. So I'd like some more information about that, really, Chair.
I can certainly respond to the concern about training. All of the ambassadors who will be providing cover in the Tourist Information Services will have not only undergone their ambassador training, which is a full day, but are also having another day's training specifically looking at the types of questions that they're likely to be asked, the level of service that they need to be delivering. And that is planned for the 10th of December next week. We've got about, I think, 10 or 11 ambassadors booked onto that for next week. In addition, those people also get an opportunity for a further day's training in World Host training, which is the same training that the Olympic Games makers undertook before the Olympics. All I can say is that I have met all of our ambassadors. They're a very passionate group of people, an incredibly passionate group of people, and a very knowledgeable group of people. Most are already involved in other community groups and societies like civic societies, Friends of the Castle, or Friends of Shire Hall. They're all involved in those sorts of things in any case, and many of them are delivering guided walks around the towns and lots of other ways in which they already engage with visitors. And I agree with you that our TIC staff currently, they have those fantastic skills and expertise as well. And this is just about making the service more affordable and trying to work with partners to be able to deliver this service and sustain it into the future, because with the diminishing budget that we have to deliver the service, I don't think we've got any other option, really, I'm afraid.
Chair, I guess what my concern would be that, what we're talking about is they have 2 days training, and I'm sure that the officer will say, well, they'll pick it up as they go along. But it's that level of volunteers, and I know that people obviously come from a good place and they're goodwill, but I wouldn't want to see an army of, if you like, retired people. Basically, I say that because a lot of the councillors here are retired, so I've got to be careful what I say. But retired people running a vibrant service that encompasses all sorts of people, young families, children, school trips, and elderly coach trips as well. My concern is that it won't have that specific spread of you like, vigour.
Yeah, I think Kelly wanted to come in briefly on that.
Thank you, Chair. I think that's a really valid point. And I asked Nicola a few weeks ago if I could look at the breakdown of the kind of demographic that we have coming forward for ambassador training. And I'm pleased to say it was quite a spread. You're right. I think there'll always be a lean to the people that are retired, because naturally they have the time. But we do have a spread of volunteers coming forward. And I'd urge you to think not only about ambassadors, but as Nicola has said, about the friends groups, the volunteer groups. If you think about town teams, if you think about the event that we put on in Caldecott Castle a few weeks ago, remember them. We had, volunteers from scouts, local groups, associations, from the time team, from the time centre. I can't even count how many people, but they were mainly young people who were just interested in doing something great in their town, putting on a special event, ensuring they had some great experience for their CVs. So I think it works both ways. What I would say is that we had a conversation, I think, at the last Select Committee when Nicola presented the tourism update and proposals for reinvigorating the destination management plan. We had a conversation, I think, about priorities. And I think it was raised again when Kath Fallon and Peter Davis came to talk about business growth and enterprise. They're a team of 2. The core tourism team is a team of 2. Yes, we have TIC staff on top of that, but not many in number. So increasingly, we've got to think about how we best deploy our resources to get the maximum outcomes. And again, with tourism in the future, we're going to have to decide which areas we really go into and we go deep, and which are the areas we stand back, but we enable others to come in and do that work for us and with us. So I think it's exactly the same conversation here. And what I would say, members, is that whilst budgets for tourism are clearly going to diminish, don't forget we do have opportunities through the Business Growth and Enterprise Strategy. We do have opportunities through the next Rural Development Plan, which is 7 years. And whilst we can't use that money to run core services, we can still mobilise that money to have the impact that we want to in the priority areas that we've identified jointly.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that a lot of the things that we're looking at today are going to come forward in terms of things like the Destinations Management Plan, the Business Growth Strategy, things like the LDS and potential through RDP funding. So we've got an opportunity to shape some of these things further over the forthcoming months. So I've got Councillor White followed by Councillor Dovey.
Thank you, Chairman. Oh, I do like this volunteering because I am an old age pensioner and I do volunteer in Monmouth, yeah. I think it's a job that can be very well done in the independent sector, because that's where I do a lot of my volunteering. I was surprised to hear the title Friends of Shire Hall mentioned, because I was treasurer of that and we had to disband because we didn't get enough uptake on it. So can someone tell me, has it started up again? Who mentioned the Friends of Shire Hall? Someone did, because I wrote it down.
Sorry, it was me.
Nicola.
I hadn't realised it was disbanded, sorry.
Oh, sadly, a couple of years ago, yes. But I would love to see it start again. But I do know from the other things I volunteer, there has to be a line manager keeping an eye on volunteers if they can turn up, or if the 11th hour they can't. We've got a... I will tell you, it's for the Military Museum at Monmouth. That's where I've been volunteering for years. And if we can't do our stint for whatever, we ring our colleagues and we get the void filled. Who would be doing this in our sector? Because it is a public sector. Our buildings are public buildings. It worries me that if somebody can't turn up, who are they going to ring to say that duty won't be filled? Because it has happened, sadly, at the Shire Hall. Luckily, I was there doing another duty as a town councillor, but there was one girl on the desk and she couldn't show the people round who wanted a wedding. Luckily, I knew all the answers, so I could take them round, show them, explain everything. But this is where we will fall down. And is it going to cost us more to have we've employed a company, you say, to oversee this? Is this going to be a great cost? It's got to be done right because it's public sector, and if it's not done right, you could lose business, and every penny counts at this time. Do you see what I'm coming to?
Yeah, indeed. No, we haven't employed a company to coordinate the volunteers. Not in this. The green screen is something completely different. Yes, that's an asset to encourage photography and digital. Yeah, it's a good point you raise, and it's something. It's a challenge of all services how we manage our volunteers, and I think there is some scope, and I think Enterprise are looking at some roles across Enterprise to maybe look at how we manage our volunteers, and just a bit more formally than we do at the moment. But clearly, each service has got a big challenge on making sure that we do manage the volunteers and we do ensure that those contacts are in place, because there's nothing worse than, as you mentioned, being a volunteer and not having someone to coordinate your work.
Yeah, I think that some of the messages that are coming through are that volunteers are an incredibly important asset and people that we value greatly, but we need to identify and note the risk here, and that the reliance, the increasing reliance on volunteers, which is becoming apparent across a number of portfolios, strong communities. We had this as an issue that came up recently, but we welcome the opportunities that this brings, but also we want to note as a committee the threat and risk from over-reliance on volunteers. Kelly, sorry, before I go to Councillor Dovey.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that I was just going to refer to, and it's only something we've started to look at, but there's definitely the intention, I think, in order to ensure that our budget proposals fly next year, we can hit the ground running. One of the things that we are discussing as a directorate at the moment is having somebody, a post internally, not consultants or externally, that coordinates the volunteer programme, because we recognise, as Councillor Watts has said, it's got to be a professional service. It's not one of these things that you can really take a risk with. So having somebody that coordinates that programme across all of the different guises I've spoken about, I think is going to be essential if we're going to really put on a great show. And I would say as well, coming back to the mandate and the points that Rachel made about marketing across the sites, yes, people will want to come in and see buildings, but we've got to have a great prospectus, we've got to have great marketing, we've got to have a great online presence. So the whole package has got to be in place, because we don't want somebody just turning up without an appointment. It's got to be run as if you'd go to a really high-class hotel. We've got to have that level, that standard, I think, to really pull the customers in and to keep them.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point in terms of the cost-benefit analysis. If we employ someone to coordinate this, they could have huge rewards in terms of support for those volunteers and the benefit for us. Just quickly to Councillor White,
Yes, can I just point out for information, the couple that I showed around the Shire Hall had made an appointment with someone who hadn't turned up.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Dovey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'd just like to refer to the Chepstow TIC, if I might. It is true we had a budget meeting of council, and the figure that was agreed, not by all of us, and some of us declared an interest because we were on this committee and knew was coming forward, didn't vote. As it so happens, we wouldn't have carried it anyway, but the figure is substantially less than the 15k that was requested by the county. Personally, I regret that, but that is just a personal thing. That begs a question of how is the county going to, this directorate going to handle the saviour of the TICs, if we could call it that, if the funds from other counties other towns don't step up to the mark as well? It would be difficult. I'd like to know if there is a sort of plan B to carry us forward. With regard to the ambassadors, I think they're a great idea. It's absolutely right, they've got to be coordinated. But I think the thing that middle-aged to elderly, provided they're active and coherent and whatnot, is great, because many of them have lived in the county or the town for a long time, and its history they can bring personal touches to, if you like. If you got one of the elder people from Redbrook, which is half in Monmouthshire, half in Gloucestershire, they would be able to talk about the times when there was tin plate works and all sorts of things there, which you wouldn't believe if you went through the village now. So I think they are essential. With regard to the TIC as well, we have just managed to strike a deal, I think, Kelly, you correct me if I'm wrong, with regard to the Severn Bridge, where we had a real budget problem, that Y Bridge, the old Y Bridge, where we had a real budgetary problem there, and Gloucestershire has agreed to share the costs. I wonder whether, bearing in mind the people of the Wye Valley on either side of the river benefit from the TIC in Chepstow, it would be something that we could revisit Gloucestershire with again. I do know some people in Gloucestershire who might fall in behind this and try and influence the council there, so that it becomes a facility for the two counties. And I think that will be, particularly as we have an extremely good manager in Chepstow, I believe. And if she was to wander off, it would be a real waste of a great asset. The other thing I wanted to say is these screens. they are doing us no service at all at the moment because the information on them is sparse and in many instances incorrect. Chepstow's, you go to the screen in Chepstow and you press the button and it is really disgraceful, and we need to have a process where somebody is canvassing for advertising on those screens, I mean attractions, to get on those screens and monitoring that they're up to date. There has been until recently, and I've got to change, stuff on there that no longer existed, and it's no good. If we're going to have them out there with Monmouthshire County Council all over them, then we've got to do it right, because it'll be a negative impact. And the final thing is, I would say that what can be done by volunteers some town councillors, but huge number of volunteers. You only have to visit Chepstow during the time of the Chepstow Festival and see what goes on in Chepstow. And indeed, we had a meeting of the marketing committee last week in Chepstow, and they just did a rolling screen display of the activities in Chepstow in 1 year. And when you're in the middle of it, you don't realise just how much is going on. And when you see it presented to you, you think, well, go down, this isn't a bad place to live anyway. Right? You know, it's a really good place to visit and live. So I think that is really what I have to say about doing this. I hope it was cohesive. I can handle that.
Just to respond to the Plan B, due to the reduced contribution that's being offered by Chepstow Town Council, I think the only place we've got to go now really is either to reduce opening hours or increase the use of ambassadors. And until we've got the ambassadors trained, and we've got them actually providing cover in the TIC and knowing how that goes, it's difficult to know exactly how that will pan out. But that will be the intention. The only other thing is looking at reducing the opening hours during quiet times, so after Christmas, January and February, perhaps closing during periods of low demand. In terms of the requesting contributions from other local authorities, it would be Forest of Dean District Council who are responsible for tourism in that on the other side of the river. Unfortunately, they've given up their tourist information centres quite a few years ago, and they do not have tourist information centres as part of their destination plan going forward. So they are not seeking to provide visitor information in a face-to-face manner, except via the businesses themselves. So we can certainly ask, but I would say that it's and we indeed we have asked in the past, but I wouldn't say that it's that likely that they'll provide a contribution, even though I completely understand that that TIC promotes businesses and attractions on both sides of the river and is currently serving their businesses. In terms of accommodation bookings, though, of course, we do take a commission on those accommodation bookings, so there is some there is some return on investment for that, and also in terms of providing the visitor with a seamless service. It wouldn't make sense if we only promoted attractions and businesses on one side of a destination. The final point was about the kiosks, and the information that's on those kiosks is provided by the businesses, and we have struggled to encourage the businesses to keep their information up to date. This was a pilot project that was funded through an RDP project. When we undertake the final evaluation of that at the end of 3 years, we will have to look at whether those kiosks have been a success overall, and if they haven't, then maybe they need to come out, but it was certainly worth a try. There is an opportunity to improve the quality of the information on them through the transfer of the database, which is currently being undertaken, to the Wales Tourism Product Database, which feeds the Visit Wales site. And I'm hoping that because that information will now feed more websites and more digital channels in the future, there will be more of an incentive for businesses to keep their information up to date. The ambassadors have also been asked to monitor the information on their nearest kiosk to whenever, on a regular basis, and report any inaccurate information to us, so that we can't amend the business's information, but we can take that information down off the system if the business is no longer operating.
I think Councillor Greenan wants to come in, but firstly, I know Councillor Dovey just wanted to follow up on a point that Nicola had made.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, the thing that goes through my mind about these screens, just to touch on that, it's no good going for 3 years and saying, well, they didn't work properly, they were a failure, when during that 3 years you perhaps haven't been monitoring it and recognising the fact that local businesses are not reacting to the screen. Local businesses react to somebody coming along and saying, this is a good facility, give me some money for it, and we'll make sure you're seen 24 hours a day. You've got to be proactive about it. We've invested in these screens. I am a little surprised, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm a little surprised that the failures going on. I mean, I've been talking about them for over 18 months, so that's half the period, you know, haven't been recognised and moved on. The other issue is about Gloucestershire and the fact that they've closed their TICs, their TICs in Colford, and I think there's one other. Obviously, they closed it if they want to save money over the past. I think closed them about 3 years ago, as I recall. But the fact is, they didn't need to have them because the TIC in Chepstow was handling everything. Chepstow is the gateway to the Forest of Dean and the Wye Valley. And so, you know, that was the place where your actual tourist was more likely to go than anywhere else to get the tourist information. I think now, if we say to them, you know, you're going to lose it, your local businesses and our local businesses are going to lose this facility because we cannot sustain it on our own, as we have done for you as well, then I think they might make a case. I mean, it's the Forest of Dean. They can make that decision really in Colford. They will know what the value of it is in Colford, and a number of the councils, as Armand, Councillor Watts would know, actually live looking over the town of Chepstow, just separated by a strip of water for the Wye. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dovey, and some useful points raised there and follow up. I'll go to Councillor Greenan, but I'm keen to bring in members who've yet to have the opportunity to speak, starting with Councillor Edwards. So, Councillor Greenan, briefly, please.
Just first of all, Madam Chair, to underline the gravity of the situation that we find ourselves in, and it's been said before, but I think it's worth repeating, that over the next few years, this council has got some huge savings to have to make. And if we were to close down every library, museum, TIC, leisure centre, we still wouldn't meet the budget savings. So tinkering around the edges is simply not going to do it for us. And this directorate alone next year has to make a 20% cut in its budget. This is big stuff that we're having to find. Officers have worked up these mandates to provide a budget that we can take forward. If in fact members do not find them acceptable, then they are going to have to agree to savings elsewhere, and I'm not sure where those are going to come from. Specifically in terms of TICs, if we don't get the sort of contributions that are necessary in the short term to take these services forward, then the sort of unpalatable circumstances that Nicola has outlined will have to be the case. We will simply have to cut our cloth to make sure that we come in within these budget mandates. Now, in the long term, I don't think TICs, quite honestly, are sustainable on their own, because we have huge budget cuts to come in the years ahead. I believe that hubs are the only way forward if we are to retain any TICs information at all. And that, I believe, is the way we have to go. Whether we like it or not, that's the way we are going to have to go in the long term. And the sooner we come to that decision, the easier it is going to be in moving forward. But it's not a threat to any town council. They must make their own decisions about where they want to put their money, or if they want to put their money at all. But if the answer is no, well, that's fair enough. That's their proper right decision to make. But then we as a county council have to make our decisions based upon the money that is available to us. And that, I'm afraid, is the stark reality of the position. I hear what Councillor Dovey has to say about Gloucestershire and the Forest of Dean. If we haven't approached them already, I think that might be worthwhile doing. But perhaps we can follow that up afterwards.
I think all of us as members appreciate the stark reality of the situation we face. And I think we've got to ask these questions, though, because ultimately it's us who've got to convey the messages to our residents. And if we don't ask these pertinent questions, then it'd be us that would face the wrath of the public from that. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I fully endorse what you just said, quite frankly. You know, I think every councillor here is fully conscious of the need for the savings, and it's important for that we give it a really good airing today. Weddings. The register, I'm out of touch with weddings. It's some 50, nearly 60 years since I got married. And so when they come to the registry office, and I presume you come to all couples in Monmouthshire have to come to the registry office to get their wedding certificates or whatever. Is there a leaflet available advertising the fact that we would like to see all their weddings at Chepstow or Abergavenny, Castles grounds, Caldecott grounds? But you don't, right? Is there anything that in the registry office that would support that type of activity? Can I briefly touch on the museums? And obviously, being an Abergavenny member, my remarks were very much around Abergavenny. The castle, we have an advantage in Abergavenny that the museum is in the castle, so the two are linked together, the thing. And my congratulations to the current curator, which I think is Rachel behind me, on the amount of good exhibitions we have. And the tremendous sort of support that it gets from local people and also from the schools. And may it go on ad infinitum, and wish her well. The exhibition she puts on with her staff are well worth a visit, and I'm sure there must be ways, even further ways, that we could advertise the necessity for people to go and see the exhibitions at the museum. Volunteers, can I briefly touch on the volunteers? In Abergavenny, there's a long tradition of volunteers. The Abergavenny History Society, the Abergavenny Civic Society, and that's the revamped Civic Society, but particularly the History Society, has a membership of something like 400 people, and they have provided visits for many, many years, or walks around the town, certainly in the summer months, and are fully, many of them are very experienced, many of them are very knowledgeable of the history that goes with the town and the locality, and therefore I welcome that this great move forward that we are asking volunteers. Volunteers are already working in the TIC, not on that, the other side of the other counter there, which is the one that's handled by St Mary's Church, and they provide a worthwhile service to the local church. And I'm just wondering if those ladies there should receive some additional training to help out. On the only occasion I've had to use the TIC, the one member of staff on duty on that particular day, and it was Bank Holiday Monday, if I remember right, was overwhelmed a bit, and I felt it necessary myself to step in, like I think Sue, and say to a couple or a visitor there, can I help you, etc. And it ended out actually the lady only lived about 200 yards off the road. But anyway, so yeah, volunteers are going to have to be a very important part of our community, and the societies that are prepared to do this are obviously in Abergavenny the History Society, St Mary's themselves, and the Civic Society. May well be the business club will be induced in due course, if they're successful with bid, to invest some money in that aspect of the town, the TIC, you know, to their benefit at the end of the day. My last remarks, I think, need to be about, perhaps it is working well, I think, the TIC in the Ties Barn. There are a certain amount of requests which end up in the one-stop shop, which is common sense. This is where a lot of people go to in Abergavenny. So visitors, if they miss the TIC building or signs, they come up the main street and obviously go into the one-stop shop. And it's a very useful addition that we have there. Last but not least, Red Square windows. Isn't it about time we refurbish the windows? They look diabolical and have done for years. They're so dull and uninteresting. Pure and simply, it's the actual fabric, you know, it's wooden windows, they probably need painting or something much more brighter. They're depressing. I don't know if Nicola would agree that they look depressing. You know, what we want to put inside, yes, is exciting quite often, but the windows themselves are not attractive. And in fact, how many people know that there is a Celtic cross in one of the windows? It's a legacy of the Garden Festival in Ebervale many years ago. So I'd like to see those windows refurbished, or at a cost, and I would suggest, with my town council hat on, that you make some approach to the town council, since they've been using it for some years. But I declare an interest then. Ask them to put a couple of quick £1,000 together and do something about it, because it would be. We've just refurbished the mural, as you are well aware, and it would be nice to see that the windows immediately underneath look attractive as well. Congratulations, anyway, to them. For leisure staff.
Are those noted? Are there any comments? Or just to note those? Yeah. Okay. I think on the weddings, because I had a question, if you don't mind, just, I know I'm going to Councillor Hayward, but I think, again, going back to the bit about being ambitious, I think you could be even more ambitious on the income from weddings. I think 15,000 seems quite low, and shouldn't it be not just weddings, but functions across the board? I appreciate it has to be joint marketing on weddings specifically, but there's a huge number of events. You know, we've got a fantastic landscape in our county to events like this. So if we could find, I don't know what your marketing budget is, but I think there's a real opportunity to increase that from 15,000 upwards. And let's be a bit more ambitious on that side.
I think that's an excellent point, and it's something that we certainly recognise the opportunity. We're talking, Kelly mentioned the opportunity for a volunteer coordinator. We're also looking at the whole marketing of the different attractions, and the weddings in particular is a brilliant opportunity for us. It's not a market that we can immediately impact, though, because a lot of bookings will be for the 16-17 rather than 15-16, but we'll do what we can this year to increase the wedding offer, and then have a package in place to make sure that we're benefiting for the brides to be now that are looking for a venue, and the grooms obviously, and where they will be hopefully in Monmouthshire attractions. possibly.
It might be worth just having a look. There's a lot of universities, neighbouring universities, that do PR marketing and events type degrees, and seeing whether or not you could partner with them from their placement years to actually work with us to develop a strategy. And you never know, there might be a job at the end of it if we can really create a great offer here on that front. Sorry, Kelly.
Just to say we've got 2 of those working with us currently.
Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Chair. I have a problem here. I am really against this mandate, whilst I agree with almost everything inside it. And I think it's one of the problems that we're very good at. We muddle several problems together and we try and solve them as one problem. The obvious one we did was when we moved from County Hall and we moved to Cwmbran up here, and we tried to combine it with agile working, and we all know that there were 2 completely different problems, but we messed both of them up because we tried to combine them into one. And I think we're in danger here of doing the same thing. Particularly listen to Councillor Greenland saying that this is an area which will be attacked and under severe pressures over the next 2 or 3 years. Unless we get our thinking straight about the problem, then we're going to just get ourselves deeper and deeper into a mire of muddled thinking. We know that county councils are complex businesses and they cover lots and lots of services. And you could start off by saying that some of those services are statutory and provide a service to the public, things like collection of bins, your social services, education. Some of them are developmental, where we have a duty to our businesses to try and develop businesses, and tourism comes in there. We have a duty to develop tourism. And then the third part of the business is developing our own assets and trying to produce our own assets into producing an income. But there are 3 separate lines of business, and we're trying to push them all into one problem here and trying to develop a mandate which develops savings in all 3, and I think it's going to get us into problems. For instance, if you look at the Shire Hall itself, the leisure centres, they are all assets in Caldecott Castle, are assets belonging to the council. And the benefit of those assets are a potential income. They might also provide an attraction for tourism, but they are basically, we're looking there to try and develop an income. And some of the conversations we've had and suggestions about coordinators and developing the asset weddings are about our asset. But in fairness, those are not going to bring, when you have a wedding in the Shire Hall, it isn't going to bring someone in from Warwickshire to come down and have a look at the wedding in Shire Hall. As pity as the bride might be, they're not going to come down for that sole reason. But tourism, as we've had plenty of meetings telling us this, is a £154 million business inside Monmouthshire. And we certainly have a right, not a right, an obligation to develop that industry for businesses and employment within the area. But it's not a statutory duty that we have to do by government, and it's not something that we're going to make money out of, but we have to encourage tourism for the benefit of business. Now, I'm going to suggest that what we should be doing is looking at business to contribute more to that, not to town councils. But you can't expect businesses to pay for the contribution, say, to Shire Hall, because that's our asset and we need the wedding. And this is why I say I don't like the mandate. It muddles everything together, all 3 arguments, under one umbrella, which we might be able to handle this year, but when we look at next year with more cuts and the year after with more cuts, we're just going to get ourselves in a mess unless we split it out now and get some clear thinking in about what parts of these businesses, are they the same business, are they managed in the same way, have they got the same problems, and do they derive the same benefits? And I think until we do that, we need to rewrite the mandate. I say I'm not against anything in the mandate, but the way the mandate is produced, I think will just cause big problems unless we sort it out now and get some clear thinking into how we divide these 3 aspects of the business of Monmouthshire County Council. I think the tourist information centres at the moment, one of the problems they've got is that they're trying to provide a general business development role. We're trying to help boarding houses and camping sites and what have you. but we're also trying to promote our own business and our own revenue by taking a little cut off this. Now, we need to be clear what we want to do and where our priorities are. And we need to sort that out before we do the mandate. I think you get the idea that I'm trying to say. I'm probably not putting it across very well, but I've got a problem with the mandate here. I think that if we carry on with this any further, that by the time we come into next year, we're going to be in a right mess because we're not quite sure what we're trying to do or where we're trying to save money.
I'll go to Kelly. But so you're saying that you support the ideas that are coming forward, but not the way that they're being presented as part of this mandate?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think the mandate just needs some administrative work in splitting out the various sections to make it clear about what is actually saving money, what we're trying to preserve to help businesses develop their industry, etc.
Thanks, Councillor Hayward. Kelly, and then I'll briefly bring in.
Thank you, Chair. I think there are some really valid points there, and I think from my perspective what the mandate probably needs is some better context, because if you like, the mandate that you have in front of you today, whether we like it or not, is a transition mandate, because we all know the position we're in with tourism and cultural services. We don't know if we're preserving TICs at the moment, because it very much depends on some of the contributions that we can seek from third parties, which we've spoken about already. If we can't get those contributions in, whether they be from other councils, whether they be from town community councils, other parties, then as Councillor Greenland said, the option is that those services will close and we will incorporate them into the hubs. So the buildings go, but actually we reincorporate that service into community hubs. If that is the case, you will see that replicated in Deb's mandate around strategic accommodation. But I think the main point that I'd like to make is a couple of months ago, Cabinet approved a report around the future of cultural services. And the main proposition there is who is best placed to own, run and manage cultural services and attractions? Because as a council, we're just not going to have the money to do it justice in the future. That piece of work is underway. The advertisement is out. We're about to interview. We've progressed that quite quickly. This time next year, we won't be in this position with this mandate because we should be in possession of a fundamentally different proposition. So you won't see some of the confusion and some of the blurring of the edges that you will see this year, because we recognise there's a problem, Councillor Hayward. We recognise these things are crashing together and they're creating rub points, but this is very much about transition, and we hope by this time next year we'll already have a clear proposition in front of you which will give separation to the strategic issues that you've outlined. Oh, and by the way, I was going to say we do attract weddings from far afield, because we had a footballer from London who was very interested in having his wedding at Caldecott Castle. So we do get them.
The point I was making, Chair, is you don't get tourism's coming to watch the weddings.
Okay. Just to mention, it would have probably been helpful for us to have had...
Is that worth arguing about?
We hadn't had the Cultural Services report come to this committee, so I think that just demonstrates the importance of things coming to us so that we can appreciate the context within which we're trying to make decisions. But Councillor Watson, I've got Councillor Dovey to come in.
I think Councillor Hayward's made some really interesting points, and what's significant about one of the things he says about how it's so important, tourism is so important for Monmouthshire. When you look at the revenue it brings in, but also outside of this local authority, it employs more people than any other industry. So I think, for an attack on that, it's kind of cutting your nose off to spite your face, really, cutting off the blood flow to your brain, if you like, because if you do that, I appreciate that, you've got to protect, obviously, education and social services, and defend that to the death. However, you're going downhill pretty fast if you start to undermine tourism. You really are. So I would say, if you think that the only option is, and it's a lack of imagination really, to go and ask the town councils, who themselves have to then raise the revenue by obviously increasing the council tax, which is a political decision at the end of the day. I think you're going to fall short. I think the idea of approaching businesses, I don't genuinely believe that this authority understands or knows all the businesses it has in the authority, who's affected by it, and I think you should probably try and make some more effort to try and build up a relationship with them and form some kind of cooperation, possibly.
And I think that probably will come through the destination management plan and some of the work that we're doing in terms of those links that are being made. Councillor Dovey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I take on board fully the comments made by Councillor Bob Greenland. he's absolutely right. I was looking at the TIC just in isolation. The thing is with Chepstow, the demographic of the town is almost unique in that the tourist centres, if you like, are at the bottom of the town where the castle is, where the TIC is, and where the museum is. And that leads me to the other thing that we haven't discussed about Chepstow, and that is the future of the museum, and whether within the teams that are working on this, there is a possibility that there could be investment in the museum to move the TIC into there, if that is the end game for having a presence in the area. I mean, what one would do with the TIC then, I really do not know, because financially the TIC costs us very little in terms of lease. It's virtually peppercorn as far as I'm concerned. So the running of the thing is the salaries, heat, light, and that is about it. So my next question is, if the TIC cannot stand in its own right, then we really need to keep the museum. It's a cultural and historic part of the town. What I would like to be seeing is what is the proposal and what work is being done at the moment to secure the future of the museum, or what they see is the way forward for the museum. The hub thing, I think, is great, but to have a comprehensive hub, you couldn't do it in Chepstow, because the commercial end of the town and the shopping end of the town and that sort of end of the town is to the north, where the one-stop shop and the library is.
Thank you, Councillor Dovey. I've got Kelly and then Councillor Greenland that'd like to come in response.
I'll be very brief, but just to refer back to the previous answer I gave around the future of cultural services and attractions, Councillor Dovey, because that essential piece of work will give us a business case for who is best placed to run the museum service in the future. So I come back to my point about this being something of a transition year, if you like, and I wouldn't want to say, yes, put the Tourist Information Centre and embed it in the museum, because we don't know yet if the museums will be in our ownership this time next year, or whether they'll go with a charitable trust or some other structure. And just very quickly on Councillor Watts's point, we're not just asking town councils and other statutory bodies for contributions. We're working with over 750 businesses directly in Abergavenny at the moment as part of the Business Improvement District. So I would like to think we are developing a very keen knowledge, and lots of those businesses have come forward and said, we will play a role in delivering TIC, just tell us what you need us to do. So it does present a logistical issue, because how do you get all of those businesses to contribute? But it's a great dilemma to have, isn't it?
Councillor Greenland.
Just very quickly, because the Chief Officer has said most of what I was going to say, but the museums are an absolute valuable asset for this county. I did see the report that I think they bring in 2 million plus a year into the local economy, and that's something we cannot miss. But it doesn't necessarily mean that local government is the best people to run museums. We know that under the constraints that we've got going forward, we probably aren't going to be able to do them justice. We need to find a really sustainable model to take them forward and to ensure that they actually improve as the years go on. That's what we're about. That's what we're doing at the moment through the process that it will unfold as the year goes on. Well, next year goes on.
Thank you, Councillor Greenland. Are there any other comments on this mandate before we sort of sum up and look to whether or not we support or not? I think the key things or concerns that we have, which we'd want to be addressed if we're going to sort of support the proposals within it, is that firstly, Councillor Hayward's point around the structure of the mandate and how it links into more of a long-term look. The risk of volunteers and the risk of over-reliance on volunteers, we'd want that to be noted. And we talked about the importance of the tourism industry and caution about not getting this right and making the wrong decision at this point. I think the key thing is we've got to be innovative and ambitious in this area, and whatever happens, that's the only way we can take this forward in the current format. So in terms of, and I appreciate Councillor Hayward's points, but given we've got to get some move forward on this, so are we happy with the ideas that are detailed? Are we happy to recommend those in terms of what goes forward, or is there anything you'd like to make commented or noted when it goes to Cabinet? Move it, okay, and in support? Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much to the officers that have contributed to that item, and we look forward to seeing how that all progresses. So on to the final budget mandate, which is the ICT savings. Who's presenting that one? Sian? Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Sian.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sian Hayward, and I'm Digital and Technology Manager for the Council. And part of my responsibilities are the delivery of the ICT iCounty strategy. And this is where we outline where our digital direction is going. Actually, part of the iCounty strategy, and one of the key priorities, are to improve our internal systems, our data and our infrastructure, and also to create products and commercial assets. And this mandate relates to those two key priorities. So what we are proposing to do is to drive cost efficiencies and income generation through our SRS service. And unfortunately, Matt Lewis from the SRS is not available to be here today, but I can answer all the questions that he would be able to answer. And also, the second proposal is to generate savings and user benefits from our software development arm. There are some risks in this mandate. One of them being the internal capacity to support software development, and also to make sure that any of the savings that we make don't have an adverse effect on SRS service standards. If you go along to page 4, there's bullet points there which detail where we're actually intending to make these savings for the SRS, £150,000 worth of savings there. And on the software development side, we're proposing to make savings and income generation to the tune of £100,000. I don't propose to go through the list of the bullet points there, but I'm more than happy to take any detailed questions that members wish to raise.
Thank you, Sian. That's very helpful. Members, any questions then on the proposals? Councillor Edwards?
Just ask Sian, what is a disaster recovery?
I sort of expected this question to come up, actually. What we have is a service whereby not everything is stored within the SRS service, just in case some disaster were to happen, and, for instance, that we weren't able to access all of the data stored in the SRS. So we actually store some of our data outside of the SRS in Torvine County Borough Council buildings and also in the police service. And what we're referring to here is the line that goes between our disaster recovery service and the actual SRS to make sure that if something critical happened, that we'd actually be able to pick up that service without any disruption to our users.
Okay, thank you. Is that okay, Councillor Edwards? Yep, okay. So we appreciate that you're doing a review at the moment of SRS, which was due to come to this committee. In terms of the risks potentially from some of the items that are put forward here, how does it all sit within the review? And have those risks been identified through that review process? It's really where is everything in terms of that review?
Yeah, well, we have almost completed the review of the SRS, and This is something that we could probably, I assume, bring to another Economy and Development Select Committee, because the review findings are very, very positive. We do have the capacity in the SRS to take things forward. We are fairly confident that these levels of savings are going to be able to happen without any reduction in service in the SRS. A lot of the savings are resulting from removing some of the contracts that we have, generating savings in the software that we use up in the SRS. Some of it is in staff efficiencies, but we are confident that removing those existing vacancies from next year's budget won't have any impact on the actual service that we provide. Obviously, it fits in with the SRS review because the SRS review itself went into how the staff resources were efficiently deployed there, and we are confident that the new structure in the SRS will address all of those issues.
So you're confident that the risks that have been currently identified through the review are included in the risk log as part of the budget
That's
mandate?
correct, yes.
Okay, great. Any other questions, members? Councillor Edwards.
Would it be of use that the members have an invitation to go to the SRS in Blenavon, and maybe when you've done your review, actually hold that particular part of the meeting there? It would seem, you know, many of us are amateurs, and it would be nice to see exactly what's going on and understand it a bit better.
I think that's a great idea. Is that okay for us to do that then and hold that part? So we'll make a note to do that when that review comes up.
That's absolutely fine. As I say, Matt Lewis is the person who's actually responsible for delivering the actual efficiency savings in the SRS, and he would be delighted to receive members up there, so you could have a look around and see what the actual service is that's provided there. I mean, the technology in essence is a virtual service, so there's not an awful lot for you to see other than people sort of sitting at their desks working, or for instance some of the data halls or the data centre up there, but we'd be absolutely delighted to take you up there and view the service.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Councillor Hayward. And Councillor Wintle.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You're quite right. All you can see is people sitting at the desk. Last time we went up there, we saw hundreds of them sitting at their desk, and most of them looking at emails. I've got to be honest, I'm not sure what this mandate's all about. It seems to say that we can make savings out of SRS because we can do some things better ourselves, and therefore we want to bring those duties in-house. Am I right first? Is that what we're saying overall is the benefit of this mandate?
This mandate is split into two. The one element,
Again.
the one element is how we make efficiencies in the SRS and create opportunities where we can generate income in the SRS as well. The second part of it is the software development arm. Currently, we commission software development via CMC Squared, and we have currently built the replacement social services system, which is custom built for the users. It means that we don't have to have a system which has, for example, a washing machine that has 100 programs and you only ever use 2 of them, but you actually wish there were other programs that you could add to it. We're paying for those programs that we don't use. So to develop our own software is custom built for all of our employees and our users who actually use it. And they are delighted with this current build of the social care software. In addition to that, we could probably sell this software on to other local authorities who could, so it would enable us to generate income from those sales. Also, when we build our own software, we avoid some of the substantial license costs and ongoing support and maintenance that we currently pay. I know for the social services system, that was in the region of around about £70,000. So developing our own software means that we avoid those costs. So as you can see, it's split into two. One is the efficiencies in the infrastructure and the data capacity in the SRS, which brings you all of the technology that you were using today to do your jobs. And the other part is in the software development, where we avoid the cost of license fees, but we actually generate some income from that as well.
Okay, Councillor Hayward.
Yep, Chair, all I can say is heard it all before. We heard it all before when we went into SRS and we pumped thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds in that, millions into that. It was going to provide a huge income stream. It was going to provide all our software. We were going to lead the country in software in education, in software in business services, etc. Then when we formed CMC Squared, they were going to take over some of the functions and sell this and produce a whole load of bunch of money for doing it. And now we're going to do it in-house. All I know is every time we go into IT costs us a fortune of money. It never works as well as we want it to, but there's always people willing to throw more and more money at it to try and get utopia, which I just don't think exists. As a budget mandate, I don't see where we're going to save money, because all we're going to do is hire a few more extra people. We might manage to get a contract variation with SRS where we don't put so much money in there. But as far as the development and what we're going to make out of income, I think it's all pie in the sky. We've never made a penny out of selling programs everywhere. We were going to sell our education program a couple of years ago for millions of pounds. It's going to provide all our funding opportunities for years to come, and in the end we just never sold a single bit of it. It's just pie in the sky, and I think when you do your impact high, I think that's absolutely right. I think the risks are high, and I think it's just aspiration. I don't understand it. I don't know whether to support it or not, because I just simply don't understand what we're trying to do.
I'll go to Kelly. I think you're saying your concerns, then Councillor Hayward, really just over the feasibility of what the likelihood of this is, given previous experience and understanding of what's in front of us. Okay, Kelly.
I think the difference this time is there's a completely different delivery mechanism, and Sian is right to point out that the mandate is actually split into two parts, and this is the mandate actually that gives me the least concern. So the first part of the mandate is about SRS, and that's about efficiency savings. So for me, this is the last of the low-hanging fruit in SRS. If we're going to make any further efficiency savings from SRS, we need the review to nudge things along at a much more significant rate, which is where that work comes in and will galvanise a new course of action for SRS. The second part is software development. We do not buy in a software development service from SRS. I don't believe, and I think I speak collectively for my colleagues, we believe they have that capability to the level and the degree that we need. That's why we've put it in CMC Squared, who've only been doing this for 8 months, don't forget, and have already developed a replacement social care SWIFT system. You will get the CMC Squared year-end position very shortly. It is a profitable one, so I hope that gives you comfort that we are on the right path, albeit these are not significant income generation amounts that we can do in 6 or 8 months. It takes a year or two to build up momentum, and obviously we can only start to commercialise products that are fully complete and we've got full user satisfaction with, and as Sian has explained, we're currently going through that process.
Councillor Wintle.
Hi, Madam Chair. I'm glad to hear what Sian was saying, that it's now we're developing our own software. Yes, there are some programs have to be specific for how we're going to use them, but there are so many software companies out in the broad world who are struggling to survive because there's a lot of competition, and so I'm a bit worried, that to some extent that we're going into this world, because, as I said, they're out there, they're going bust every other day. Are we qualified to, is it going to be cost effective? Those are sort of some of the words I'm thinking about. As Kelly knows, I get some insight into some of what's going on. And I'm quite worried, really, and that's my concerns.
To start off with, we are developing internal in-house software with the view to creating savings, and those savings can be quite large. Obviously, the second phase of that is to develop into commercial activities whereby we sell the software on. It's surrounded by a really robust governance structure. It's monitored by any software development project we take on has a strong business case sat around it. This is monitored by our digital technology board that we have. It's also monitored on a day-by-day basis to make sure that it meets the needs of the users, and it's done using agile software development technology, which means that the developers sit there with the users, working out their processes and systems that they work with, so that they can develop something which is really bespoke and specific. Using that methodology, we can monitor progress, we can monitor costs, we can monitor how these things might end up in a profit situation. So there is quite a strong supporting mechanism to monitor how we're making progress on this. It's early days, and we will continue to monitor and see how that goes.
Sure, and then Councillor Green, I think, wants to follow up on your point.
I'm glad that you're doing it that way, because that is the most efficient way of doing it. I just hope that you got the software rights side of it tied up as well.
Councillor Green, did you want to follow up specifically on that point? Because I know Councillor Prosser wants to come in with a question.
Yeah, well, yes, I do. And actually, Madam Chair, if I could make one final point on a general point, because the Chief Officer and I have got to go to another meeting shortly. So the point about this is and I understand members' reluctance to believe that anything can come out of software development. I quite understand that. But I think you need to look at the social services development that is now nearing completion. Before, they bought a very expensive off-the-shelf package, which frankly didn't do half of what they wanted it to do. What we've now done, I should also declare an interest, or did I do that, as Director of CMC Squared. What we've now done through the development of this package is to build them a bespoke piece of software using open source coding, which enables them to do much, much more than they ever did before, and it is at a cost which will be very, very worthwhile. I think it'll repay itself in 2 years or thereabouts, something like that anyway. So, and we are also developing other software packages for outside companies bringing income in. That's what's happening at the moment. So those are the points but the other final point I wanted to make is just you have been given at an earlier part of the meeting some misinformation, and I want to just correct that. And it was going back to the point I made before about our settlement as opposed to Denbighshire. And Councillor Watts said at that point that Denbighshire's collection rate was better than Monmouthshire's. I'm well aware of Councillor Watts's modus operandi, so I've taken the trouble to look up the figure from Wales Statistics. And actually, in terms of the 14-15 collection rates, the highest is Pembrokeshire, second is Flintshire, third is Monmouthshire, and fourth is Denbighshire, despite the fact that we have a ratio of 29 officers to 1,000 population, and Denbighshire have 41 to 1,000. We have a better collection rate than Denbighshire, and I think that we should applaud the officers, the staff and the managers for their high collection rate.
Okay, thanks for that point. Councillor Prosser, and then I know Councillor Hayward wants to come in. If I can take Councillor Prosser first, if that's okay, because he's been waiting.
Yes, I just wanted to make a general comment that councillors have experienced problems with software and IT. We all know that. It's been an ongoing thorn in our side, if you like. And when we come down to development, I think you're going in the right direction. I think you're pushing all the right buttons. We are the he who dares wins council. And we've got to take a few risks. I am a little bit concerned that when you design software in-house, and if it was to go wrong, you've only got one person to blame, and that's yourselves, and you can't get out of it. Because when you buy off somebody else, you can go back and say, excuse me, this didn't work, can you please fix it? Whereas if you do it yourself, you ain't got anybody to go to other than yourselves. And so to that end, it's a risk that we take, and I appreciate that, but it's also a big saving that will be retrieved at the end of the day. So it's that risk that we're looking at. And so I suppose what I'm seeking is assurance, really, that the people who are doing this work know what they're doing, they've got all the requisite backups, and you've answered a lot of my question previously, because you came in and that was my question, but you said they're looking at the systems, they're analysing what does the user want. That's very, very important, because at the end of the day, it's the customer that has to be served, the customer being our officers and our community, the people out there getting the services. So that needs to be right. So it's just this matter of, yeah, it's a great idea, yes, lots of savings, but we've got to get it right, and I need that assurance.
Yeah, and we are particularly keen on making sure that that we have the support and maintenance in place to make sure that these systems work. We buy that support and maintenance in from the off-the-shelf companies who obviously have developed all the software. When we are using open source technology, that means that we are using coding which is freely available to anybody, and it's coded in such a way that anybody would be able to pick up that code and make sure that, you know, that sort of updates are made or amendments are made to that code. And an example of that happened with the development of the social care application, because we had some outside contractors who developed the original code for us, and we at some point decided we would finish that off ourselves, and the CMC Squared developers actually picked the code up and finished off the development of that code. So it's done in such a way that it's easy for somebody else to come along and pick it up. Now, having said that, CMC Squared, the development developers there, are actually commissioned to support and maintain that that system once they develop it as well. And we will pay a small fee to them for that development and ongoing maintenance. For instance, we used to spend £30,000 a year on that support and maintenance for the social care system. In addition to the licence fees, we will be paying CMC Squared around about £20,000 for the same support and maintenance of the system that they've actually developed. And that's all taken into account within the business case. And any sort of contracts, service level agreements, any legal agreements that we have for that piece of software, including the intellectual property rights, for instance, which belong with Monmouthshire, will be written into all of those agreements, along with the software maintenance and support outlining the detail of that support.
Thank you, and thanks for your question. I think some of the reassurances that we need will come out of the review, and that's part of the problem. This has come before the review's ended, and it's very difficult to make decisions now without having that sort of history and understanding there. Councillor Hayward.
Just the question that Councillor Poster asked, really, I want to ask in a different way. We are told that we're all right because it's all being overseen by the Digital Technology Board. Which august people sit on this board?
We've got Councillor Murphy, Councillor Greenland, Matt Lewis from the SRS, our Chief Operating Officer of the SRS, Stuart Arthur of CMC Squared, and myself and other officers.
So we're all very assured that we're being looked after. Thank you.
Members, do you have any other questions on this mandate, Councillor Dovey?
Not this matter, but could I refer back to one earlier which I should have raised?
If you wouldn't mind if we wait until we've just finished on this item, then we'll come back to you if that's all right, if you don't mind. Okay, so members, I know there's a lot of questions and uncertainty about the feasibility of this, but are you happy to support that this, you know, what's being proposed, or is it something?
Chair, I think since there is a review is yet to come, I don't see how at this moment in time we could actually support this particular.
Sian?
I have to stress here that the SRS review is hand in hand with the actual £150,000 efficiency savings that we are going to make through this mandate. It has no impact on the software development side of things. They're two separate items. But in spite of what the outcome of the SRS review, which has already been done, and we are already confident that that's actually fine as a process for delivering these savings, they go hand in hand, but we are confident that that will actually happen. We are confident these savings, regardless of any review outcomes, would have been made anyway.
Councillor Hayward.
Chair, just to be helpful, can we propose that the mandate continues to council, but that we're not approving it as such? We're just agreeing that the mandate should be developed further, but it hasn't got our full confidence and backing.
We'll hold our fingers.
Okay, members happy with that we welcome that it'll be carry on as is, but won't necessarily. Sorry, Councillor Higginson.
I mean, this is where we are at the moment, and everything is subject to review. So for me personally, I mean, we're looking at the savings that Sian has put forward in this documentation here. We either accept them or we don't. That's where we are at the moment. Anything else comes on is subject to further review. So I don't see that holding fire is on, to be quite honest.
Okay, so we've got to either support or reject this in principle and then go from there. Okay,
I second that, Chair.
those in support? 6 of us, those against? 1, and abstain? Okay, so we vote to support that and it will go forward then. Okay, thanks members. I'll just come back to council. Thank you. Okay, sorry, thanks Councillor Higginson. I appreciate we haven't had a break, but we've only got a short item left, so should we just carry on? And I think, you know, we should be finished fairly shortly. But I'll just go back to Councillor Dovey, who had a point to make on an earlier mandate.
Yes, it's the Appendix 4 summary list of budget savings, and it is item 35. And it's a transformation of children's services for special needs, additional needs, and it's got Mountain House on it. Now, when you look at the comment side here, it says proposals will look more effectively integrating and streamlining the current service offer with what matters for the child and family being the core focus of the review. You could have said that at any time during this, the history of the school. My great concern is, and I'm sure Councillor Hayward, I think you're still a Governor Bob, aren't you?
I am, that's why I love taking part in it.
Yes, right. The issue for me is this, that there were issues coming over the horizon for Mountain House School when the previous director, Andy Keep, was in office, and indeed he was supposed to be coming to the school just before I resigned with proposals. In actual fact, he didn't turn up, as I understand. But since then, there have been assurances that this school, the proposals for it, are all in hand to carry it forward, year after year after year. And we're no further forward at all. I've raised it at different meetings. I've stopped of recent time because my wife was governor there. Although she never talks to me about anything like that at all. But she's resigned now. That's absolute. I said was.
Oh, I beg your pardon, I beg your pardon.
You were probably on another holiday, Bob. But my concern is we've got something in here, yet again, that means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. And my own feelings are we are not giving this school and this asset the attention that it deserves, either at cabinet level or indeed in the directorate level. I have spoken to the director about Mountain House School. Just one example. I raised nearly 2 years ago the fact that the school, when all the IT was provided for the other comprehensive, you've got to bear in mind Mountain House School is a comprehensive, the IT there was virtually zilch. And this is for the most needy of our children. IT is really very important to them. £14,000. I mean, £14,000 now is a bit of money. You know, we look under pebbles for everything. But the fact of the matter is, that has been raised and raised and raised, and nobody has done anything about it. And it just goes to show the importance this county puts on that school and the children in it, who, it says, transformation of children's services for special needs, additional needs. And it says here, all this blurb about doing the right thing. You know, well, we're not doing the right thing.
Councillor
I
Dudley,
have strong reservations. I want this raised.
Okay, so we'll note that and minute that, but that will go to CYP on the 10th of December. So if you're able to attend that, if not, we'll put those representations to the chair, and then that will get covered as part of the ALN review there, if that's okay, because that's the CYP.
But it'll be in this, won't it? It'll be noted in here.
Yep.
Thank you.
On to the additional paper, which is the strategic risk assessment, of which I think there are 3 risks on there for us as a committee, looking under our directorate. Which officer's going to just briefly present this to us? Yep, brilliant. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great.
Bob, have a word after.
It's not just a risk. Look at the money they say they're going to save. 450,000.
The cynic in me says they will have to.
Okay, is everyone settled? People who are coming, staying, going? Councillor Hayward. Can I ask Richard to present the risk log to you? As we discussed in the pre-meeting earlier, the risk log has been sort of tabled on this agenda to be considered by you in conjunction with the budget mandates that you've discussed. We've placed it after the budget mandates because we didn't believe you could discuss the risks of those mandates until you'd actually discussed the mandates. But really, these items, the 2 items on the agenda, are aligned, and discussion that you now have should be in light of what you've heard today. So I'll just present to Richard and he'll introduce his report.
Thank you for that, Hazel. And just to repeat it, as Joy said at the start, and Hazel just re-emphasised, this risk assessment will go ahead now alongside the budget proposals, along to those same decision-making meetings. The purpose of the strategic risk assessment is to provide an overview of the current and future risks facing the authority. Bringing together the risk assessment ensures that strategic risks are identified and monitored by the authority, that risk controls are appropriate and proportionate, and that senior managers and elected members highlighted as responsible for them systematically review the strategic risks. There's 3 appendices to the report. The first appendix is the current risk log of 2014, and that's one which is most relevant to the budget mandates you've been scrutinising this morning. It's important to point out that this risk assessment is a bit more concise than those which committee may have seen in previous years, and also that it brings together the high and medium risks that face the authority. The lower level strategic risks are taken care of in terms of the council's service improvement plans, which are available quarterly on the hub. Appendix 2 gives you some context around the risk management policy that was approved by Cabinet in July 2011, and how the strategic risks that appear in the Appendix 1 have come forward. And also then bringing together Appendix 3 provides you the strategic risk assessment, which was approved by Cabinet from last year, and that shows the progress made against those strategic risks, and also where risks have then come forward into this year's risk log, Appendix 1 for 2014. So bring back towards the recommendations. The recommendations for committee this morning are to agree that the most significant risks facing the organisation have been captured and assessed appropriately, that to scrutinise the actions taken, in particular in light of the budget work you've undertaken this morning, are captured. And I think I just want to draw attention to a couple of areas listening to committee this morning that have come out as relevant to that. You've discussed income targets and capital receipts, which captures risks in Appendix 1 on page 4 and 5. You've discussed the risk around ICT infrastructure, and that's captured in terms of page 6. You've discussed around workforce and volunteer risks, And although that's allocated to Strong Community Select Committee, it is involved there in the wider risk. And also there is a risk on page 7 which hasn't been allocated, but at the bottom of page 7 there, that risk around the economy in Monmouthshire is clearly relevant to Economy and Development Select Committee. So with that in mind, it is for the committee to decide whether the actions that are proposed are appropriate to mitigate those risks at the moment. And if the committee feels so, to identify and agree any further evidence that risks which aren't in here maybe should be in here. And that would be subject then to Cabinet decision on whether to approve those or not. So happy to take questions on that in light of your discussion this morning, Chair.
Thanks. Councillor Hayward, then Councillor Edwards.
If you turn to page 10 of the report there, it gives you the risk matrix which is used to inform the risks. So you can see there the impact and severity and likelihood taken into account, which will give you the high, medium, low level scoring in line with the authority's risk management policy.
Yes, Chair, I understand that, but there's a different sort of risk. If a risk, for instance, has just a moderate severity, but almost certain to happen, then you'll put it down as a medium risk. Now, there's a difference between if you then have a catastrophic severity, but no likelihood of it happening, it'll still be medium, or only a possible likelihood it'll happen, it'll still be medium. And it's normal on the risk assessments to put both of those down so you can assess the type of risk it is, whether it's one that's likely to happen, or the one that even if it's unlikely to happen, if it does happen, it's going to be catastrophic to the authority. And it's always put that way so that you get a better understanding. Just to say it's red, orange or yellow doesn't really give us the information that we would normally expect.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. I think it is a fair point that we'll need to go back and consider to make it more explicit where those scorings have come from.
So that's some useful feedback, which we'd like to see possibly an update on. So thanks for that, Councillor Hayward. Councillor Edwards, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The risk I'm looking at is on 5 and 6. Potential that the authority, excuse me, is unable to deliver the new schools capital programme, high risk. And of course, there is an overlap here with the sale of obviously the cattle market in Abergavenny, the site there. And I'm just wondering whether it's catastrophic rather than high.
Something that probably colleagues...
You haven't had any money yet, so I understand.
Something that colleagues are probably best placed to answer.
Yeah, in terms of the actual receipts that we need to accrue in for the actual 21st Century Schools bid, it's in the region of £40 million. The cattle market sale, the disposal to Morrison's, is only one part of that. And we actually have a plan in place in terms of the disposals that we're looking to achieve and the time frame associated with that. Obviously, members are concerned that at this moment in time there is no active work taking place on that cattle market site, but we have entered into a legal agreement that gives them 2 years to construct out, which gives them until 2016, and we have forecast a receipt to be received in that financial year. Therefore, at this moment in time, it is not a catastrophic risk.
Just to note to members, we've got our January meeting is focusing on risk specifically. So the focus today really is now just to pull out, are there any key concerns that we want to focus on in that meeting? For example, I potentially would like to see the asset management side of things looked at in more detail with the Cabinet member looking at that, so the impact from capital receipts and disposal of assets. I know that's kind of Strong Communities as well, because I don't think the asset management plan has actually come to our committee, but it's listed under our obviously it's under our directorate because we share the same directorate, but I think it might be useful to look at that personally. That's my thoughts. Councillor Prosser.
Yes, sorry to derail you slightly, Chair, but just going back to my colleagues' comments on risk, etc. Take the one for potential significant harm. on page 5, and it says the likelihood of this occurring in a given year is low. Right? It's statement. The likelihood of it occurring is low. So if you go to the matrix, unlikely is all low. Possible to happen is low or medium. And the first high mention is likely to happen. So, whereas I understand the sentiment behind if it happens, it's very, very catastrophic and shouldn't be happening, but the risk of it happening, as stated down here, doesn't comply with your matrix. And I think you need to revisit the analysis of what is high and what is medium, etc. Because there's a heck of a lot of highs in here. I think we're getting an awful lot of things wrong if that's the case, because going on your own matrix, there are only 3 categories which are high, and that's catastrophic unlikely, catastrophic and almost certain, or major and almost certain. Those are the 3 categories for high. And yet we've got loads of highs down here, and I'm getting a bit nervous on, let's revisit how we classify. So I do go along with my colleagues' comments, and I think we need to revisit that.
I think there's fair points made there, and I think Councillor Hayward just wanted to follow up on Councillor Prosser's points, which...
Yes, Chair, further to that, because there's no mitigation in here, that where it's high in 2013, 2014, we're saying it's also going to be high in 2015, 2016. Which seems to indicate that we're not even going to do anything about it. We recognise something that could be catastrophic to the authority, and we say that next year is still going to be catastrophic, which for the risk assessment doesn't seem to be very sensible to me.
I'm just going to let Hazel come in a moment, if that's okay.
Yeah, your role as a select committee is to assure yourselves that you are satisfied that the cabinet member and the officers are taking all the appropriate actions to mitigate those risks. Now, you can't do that today because there's obviously not enough time for you to do that in detail, but we've provided it today so that you can tell us who you want to have before you in January. On the 8th of January, you'll have the opportunity to discuss these risks in detail, and then that is the point where you need to be assured as a select committee that the risk has got the right grading and that the actions being taken, so, you know, actually sort of validate the risk level that it's been given. So, I mean, the chair has pointed out the asset management one that perhaps could be brought through to the 8th. The other obvious one in your work programme is the SRS one, which you've discussed in detail and is in your work programme. But if you'd like to discuss that at that meeting as well, this is your opportunity really to bring forward your concerns around the risk, but we do take on board your comments about the process, and I think Richard will take those comments back.
Okay, so do members have anything else that they'd like to raise for the January meeting above the 2 items there that Hazel mentioned? Councillor White? Councillor White.
Well, I've listened to what Hazel said, so I'm going on that now. And she said that in January we ought to visit some of these and have the cabinet members present. Well, it seems to me that we need all those cabinet members present because it all hinges on each other. And I would also like to see Sarah McGuinness because of the vulnerable children and that issue.
Yeah, I think it's only the ones that relate to our portfolio rather than the ones that will be picked up by the other committees. So CYP will pick up the vulnerable children ones, which I've been told we can go to those committee meetings and have an input.
My mistake. I'm not on children and young people anymore. Forgot.
Thanks, Sue. But I think we can go along to them if we want to have it. I'm sure the chair will let us input. So. I think there's a couple of things here which are obviously highlighted as risks, such as ICT, which is a huge risk for us as a county, but I think it is being covered personally through that. We've had quite a few reports on this, and I do think we need to report back on iCounty and on the discussions with Welsh Government around broadband rollout, but whether it needs to come under the risk, I'm not so sure.
I just point out, Chair, that the iCounty one is high. Historically, it's been a high risk, which, as Councillor Prosser helpfully said, was catastrophic. And in 2015-16, after the information we had on the last paper, it's still going to be a high risk, still catastrophic. So I think, yes, we should be looking at that, whether we...
Just to add from your discussion just morning then, is there anything in particular in terms of activity and the actions proposed so far that you feel that, should be added at this stage? And bearing in mind we'll go back to scrutinise these in more detail, but is there anything at the moment that you feel, particularly from the discussion this morning, is fundamentally missing, I suppose?
Okay, we'll keep that question in mind. Just briefly, Councillor Dovey has indicated to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, the area that I'm really concerned about is the 21st century schools, and Chepstow particularly, because once I heard what Councillor Murphy said, and the fact that I'm on the school as a governor, and I've been involved in the catchment discussions. The thing is like shifting sand to me. If you are in this catchment meeting thing, what we have is a situation where it would appear that you have Caldecott be virtually at a point of no return, I suspect now, going forward as one of the first choice schools, and it has.
Councillor Dovey, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think it comes under CYP or that we can't cover it under our committee or under our directorate that we're responsible to or responsible for. So that would be CYP, wouldn't it, if it's 21st century schools? So it'll be in their risk meeting in January, which we're welcome to attend and input into, if that's okay.
I think we've got things that are in parallel here at least, because I think the process is wrong. And I also am beginning to question even if the school in Chepstow is going to go forward as envisaged. Indeed, I think the whole premise, I know more about it, is the decision to have 4 schools probably was wrong in the first place.
I appreciate your concerns, and we'll note those. But again, it won't come under our risk as a committee, because ours is the Economic Directorate, not Children and Young People. So it'll fall under that portfolio.
All right.
Okay. Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Chair. If I can break a habit of light, I'd be helpful to Richard. If we could say that, yes, what we should be saying is that there should perhaps be a risk, as we looked at the mandate development of leisure and outdoor education services, there should perhaps be a risk to the health of the people of Monmouthshire by cutting certain services back. Museums, castles, tourism, there should perhaps be a risk to the general economy if we cut support for tourism. ICT savings, I haven't got a clue what we can say on that. I leave that to better people who understand what they're talking about.
Yep.
Just pick up on maybe particularly around the risk around tourism and economy. The last risk in there on page 7 identifies that, and maybe based on that we could make a bit more of a note into the reason why it's identified around some of the issues around tourism, leisure and culture, which we discussed today, because that seems relevant to that overall risk there around the prosperous economy for Monmouthshire. And then maybe we can look at reflecting somewhere else around the risk to health and well-being around leisure services and any other risk as part of a wider risk around health and well-being. There's probably more activity that impacts on it.
Okay, if there's anything else you want to add, or we support the risk log as it stands and then ask for ICT and asset management as the items under our remit are brought forward in the January meeting. Councillor Prosser?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that I can think of today, but it's a living document really, and as risks present themselves, we address them and we add them to the list. So I look forward to seeing the list of all of the things in our portfolio at the next meeting, and anything else we think of at the time, it's up to us to advise the officers and say, have you looked at this, please?
There's a number of issues and risks that have come up today that we might want to give further thought to, and we need time to do that. So like you said, it's a living document, so we can come back to you with those, and you can come back through me if you want to request anything for the January meeting.
And the formatter of likelihood and severity.
Yeah, sure, so to look at that again. Councillor Dove, you've got your microphone. Did you want to speak as well?
Oh, sorry, no.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay, so do you agree the risks going forward are the ones that have been identified in this document? Okay. Yeah. And the two risks in January will be ICT and asset management, as discussed previously. Yep. Okay, brilliant. So move that. I think we've come to the end of the agenda, but I can't find my agenda amongst all the papers. Yeah, okay, brilliant. Thanks, members. So our next meeting now is in January, so have a very happy Christmas, although I'll see you all at full council, no doubt. Thank you.